Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the special council meeting of Tuesday, November 30th. Open session commencing at 9 a.m. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, please do not utilize the chat function, as this is a public meeting and all conversation should take place in this council chambers. I'll call the meeting to order. A motion, please, for the adoption of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor Vale. All in favor? That's passed. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in today's agenda? Seeing none, we have no deputations, we have no correspondence. We'll move right into item 6, which is the proposed capital budget. So I'm just going to ask for a motion to receive the budget book, receive the 2022 proposed capital budget, and then we'll get an overview. Councillor Ashmore and Elmsley, all in favor? That's passed, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Director Stover, our Director of Corporate Services, to give us a quick run-through on discussions today. So go ahead.
Thank you. So today's deliberations are going to focus on tab 16, which is our capital budget. So I'd ask you to turn to page 177. And new for this budget book, pages 177 to 180 are the deferred capital projects. So these are projects that are not included in the 2022 budget as it's proposed. These were projects that needed to be reprioritized due to either funding or resource constraints and would be considered in the 2023 budget. So if you, on page 180, you'll see that this list of projects totals almost $17 million and would require primarily to be funded by about $16.5 million from the capital reserve, and that capital reserve is tax levy supported. So in order to proceed with any of these projects, we'd need tax levy support. So that's our list of deferred projects, again, not included in this year's budget. If we turn to page 181, this is the start of the 2022 capital program. And page 181 and 182 is just a summary by category so that you can see at a high level how much we're spending on bridges or rural resurfacing as an example. You can see that total component by category. So the total budget this year is just shy of $39 million. And again, primarily being funded through the capital reserve. If you could switch to the next page, Sarah. Yeah, so you can see the total budget at the bottom, $38.7 million. 14.8 of that is being funded through the capital reserve, and again, that's tax levy supported. And we'll talk about how that funding came about. There was some one-time infusions of money into that reserve this year that enabled us to do that. Normally, we have about $9 million to spend on the capital reserve, but we'll talk about that a little bit when we get into the reserves. And then you can see the other significant component is the gas tax reserve at $8.6 million. And again, that also had a large infusion that enabled us to spend essentially double what we would normally spend on gas tax projects. The other key that towards the right side of the chart, you'll see debentures at $3 million. And I'll look to the treasurer, but I believe that $3 million taps out the council-approved debt limit that we're allowed to spend on an annual basis. So we've maxed out our debt spending, our debt limit, so any additional debentures would require a special debenture over and above that. So then if we turn to page 183, I won't go through the rest of the capital program, but it follows a similar process that council's familiar with, where the top chart is the projects that we're undertaking and the budget and the funding source, and then this chart below it always provides some additional scope or rationale for that capital program. So that's our capital budget in a nutshell for this year, and we'll go through that today in detail. I'd now ask you to turn to tab 18. And this is on page 225, this is our reserves and deferred revenues. And there was a lot of questions that came in this year through the council Q&A about our reserves. So I wanted to take a moment to walk you through this section as well. So if you can turn to the next page. So this first page on page 225 is a summary of our reserves, very similar to what we did in capital, where we summarized by category and then went into the detail. The reserves, we've also put together a summary that highlights how much we have in each of the categories. So you can see infrastructure reserve as an example is 27.5 million. Those are the reserves primarily that we tap into for capital. The rate reserves are to do with the area rating, contingency reserves, all the way through. You see in total the city has about $69 million in reserves is what we're expecting at the end of this year. The 2022 contributions are funds that are coming into the reserves either through projected revenues or through the operating budget where we have a defined contribution to reserves. And then the 2022 operating column is funds that are funneling out of reserves to support our operating budget. 2022 capital are funds coming out of the reserves to support our capital program. And then you can see what we project the year-end balance to be in 2022 of $56 million. And for those in the public that might be listening to this conversation, we have to keep in mind the city has $3.5 billion worth of assets. And so $56 million sitting in reserves or a savings account would be similar to a household having about $7,500 sitting in RSPs or any sort of savings that they would have to fund other things. So 56 million is a big number, but when we look at the big machine that we're trying to operate, you bring it down into a household context, it's really not that large of an amount. So if we turn to page 226, this is the start of the detailed actual reserves that we have. So infrastructure reserve of 27 million that we saw on the previous slide. Now you see the individual reserves that make up that balance. And I'll highlight a few of them for you. About halfway down, you see the asset management reserve, starting with a balance of $3.8 million. This is more commonly what we refer to as the capital reserve, or historically we've called it the capital reserve. And I want to highlight this one for a couple of reasons. Council made the decision earlier this year to transfer the 2020 surplus of $3.2 million into this reserve. So that's why we're starting with a nice healthy balance of $3.8 million. We're then contributing $11 million into this reserve this year. $9.1 million is our normal contribution that comes from the operating budget. And then council gave direction that we could proceed with a 1.5% dedicated roads levy that would be added to the tax bill specifically to fund capital. And so that's giving us an extra 1.9 million. So that's why we're able to have $11 million in contributions this year. So kudos to council in that the $3.2 million worth of surplus plus the 1.9 we're getting from the 1.5% dedicated levy gave us about an extra $5 million that we were able to contribute towards the capital program, allowed us to spend the $14.8 million that you see coming out to support the 2022 capital. And then you'll see that the balance is pretty much depleted at the end of 2022. So there will be no funding sitting in there unless, again, when we come forward with the 2021 surplus, council gave direction to flow it through this reserve. That would help to support that balance. So that's our asset management reserve. And again, that's the reserve that primarily funds our capital program. At the bottom of the infrastructure reserve total, you'll see the capital contingency reserve. It starts with a balance of about $3.8 million. And this reserve sort of serves two purposes. When staff and treasury bring forward the capital close report, if there's projects that have gone over budget but within the council approved policy, they will fund it from this capital contingency reserve. If there's projects that were tax levy supported that are under budget, the money will go into this reserve. So we use this reserve to flow through any overages or underages on approved capital projects. The other thing we use this reserve for is when we go out for a competitive bid, out for a tender or an RFP, and a project comes in well over budget, we would come back to council, typically ask permission to have an additional budget, and this is the pot of money that we would use to fund those programs. So you can see we contribute about $1.7 million through the operating budget. This year, we're proposing to spend 1.4 of it in the 2022 capital budget, leaving a balance of 4.1. That balance does seem a bit high, but the treasurer will tell you she likes to see that balance sitting around $2 million. But there are a couple of significant items that we know are going to be coming forward to council in the near future, where we've had some overages on tenders and RFPs that have gone out that will consume roughly half of that and bring the balance down to where we think it should be. So moving down the page, the very last item is the election reserve. This is in our rate reserves, and we had a council question and answer that came in. So I just wanted to highlight under the 2022 operating column, you'll see $220,882 being drawn out of the election reserve. And that's to support the costs associated with the election for next year. So any staffing or any other additional costs that may come out of the election. So that is being recovered through this budget. So next slide, please. So moving over, the next reserve I want to bring to your attention that has a very large balance is the general contingency reserve, sort of in the middle of the page. And it has an opening balance of $11.7 million. This reserve, although the balance looks very high, sitting at $9.9 million at the end of 2022, most of those dollars are committed. And so it's really, the general contingency reserve contains what I will call a bunch of sub-reserves. And so the winter control reserve that council established is sitting in there, the WSIB reserve, the insurance reserve, the pandemic money that we received sits in this reserve. So of the $9.9 million, there's about $3.2 million that's left uncommitted that could be used for other purposes. And when we get into the operating budget next week, you'll see that we are proposing to use some of that uncommitted balance to support the donation to the hospital if council chooses to do so. And so I think that is the end of, oh, sorry, I think there's one more. Flip to the next page, Sarah. Yeah, so the last reserve I want to bring to your attention, again, about halfway down the page, all the important ones seem to be middle of the page, is the infrastructure gas tax reserve, sitting at $4.7 million as our opening balance. Again, we typically would spend all of our gas tax funding in a year, but you'll recall that in this year, 2021, the federal government flowed through a one-time doubling of the gas tax reserve. So we received additional funding of about $4.5 million in 2021. That's why we're starting with that healthy balance. In 2022, we'll get our normal contribution of $4.8 million, and we're committing right now through the proposed capital budget. We're expecting to spend about 8.6 of that, leaving a balance of $892,000. And so if there are some additional projects that council wanted to proceed with in this year, in the 2022 capital program, there's about $700,000 of extra gas tax funding that would be available to use for other projects should council choose to add some projects to the 2022 list. And so with that, Mayor Latham, that's the end of my overview, unless anybody has any questions.
Thank you. Let's just go through, while we have the reserves in front of us, let's just, number one, we'll see if there's any questions, but let's go through the question and answer to make sure from the reserve portion. So in your yellow folder, there was an updated question and answer sheet in color, and the back 2 pages are questions related to the reserves. So while we're on reserves, before we get to the budget, let's just make sure everybody's comfortable with the answers they have. So page 225, Councillor Richardson, you had a question about contributions to reserves for 2022. I think your question's probably been answered, but are you good? Okay. You've got another one on 225, what is included in other reserves, and that was found at the bottom of the page. Are you good? Okay. 225 long-term financial plan, it was mentioned that we have 62 reserves. This is part of our reserve strategy coming forward. Are you okay with that answer? Thank you. Myself had a question on the capital contingency reserve, so that's been answered. 227 corporate services, my question has been answered, thank you. The next page, 227, so let's talk about that for a minute on page 227. I would propose, we've had this business incubator reserve sitting there, I don't know, it's been there since I was on council in 2003. So, you know, we've just got the other one is the Tourist Information Center Reserve. I know we were talking about some tourism kiosks at something. So I think in talking to Jen and the treasurer, they're comfortable if council's okay with just combining those into the Economic Development Reserve. We'll have one reserve. If we do a business incubator in the future, we can still take it out of that reserve. We don't need 3 reserves when we could have 1 reserve. So is council comfortable moving, I guess, that the project or the Tourism Information Center Reserve and the Business Incubator Reserve be rolled into the Council Economic Development Reserve? Does that seem to make sense, Councillor Dunn? Second by Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. And then the last question I had was on the federal gas tax funding, and that's been answered. Thank you. Any other questions on the reserve portion of the budget that weren't submitted just while we're there? Okay. Let's get at it. So what the plan is, what I'd like to do today, did you have anything you wanted to add, Caroline, just before I move off of that? You'll be with us all day and as we go through it. So the plan is just to go through this line by line. We'll try to cross-reference with your questions. We'll go slow. We'll take it. So, you know, if I miss you, we can go back. Just, I want to make sure we sort of, before we go on to the next page, that everybody's comfortable with where we are as we go through it. So I'd like to go through the capital budget first, and then we'll go through, as per the agenda, the decision units, and then we'll see where council wants to go from there. So I guess first, on the deferral list, 177, 178, 179, and 180 are the 4 pages of items that are deferred. We have a deferral list every year. This is just, council asked that we get a copy of it in our budget so we know where staff is making decisions on what to include and what not to include. So this is not a new list, it's a new in our budget. Usually when the budget comes to council, you know, staff have made these decisions but this gives council an idea. We have a deferral list, and Councillor Yeo brought it up before, every year, you know, so we're trying to live within our means. It's not a bad news story. Part of that infrastructure levy that we committed to, roads levy for 1.5%, was to start attacking this, you know, this deferral list, so hopefully we don't have it every year. So there are some questions on 177. I think Councillor Richardson, you had a question regarding the deferred projects. What's our strategy for catching up? Do you have an answer there? Are you good with that answer? Or are you some more information you're looking for? No? Okay. And Councillor Elmsley on 178, you had a question about the fleet need 2 excavators has been deferred. So has that been clarified for you? Thank you. 179, Councillor Richardson, you had a question about the Manvers Arena being deferred. I think there's a story to tell there, so if you're in support of it, would you be open to recommending those 4 deferred projects for the Manvers Arena be forwarded over as a decision unit, and we can deal with them later? Because I think there's a possible funding source for those. So will you move that as a recommendation, that project? I don't have a project number, so Manvers Arena parking lot and lighting, Manvers Arena universal accessible washroom, Manvers Arena chiller and accessories, and Manvers Arena exterior doors be moved over for decision units for a later discussion today. You'll move that? second by Councillor Vale. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. So question, so you're good on that. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question about the roof complex for community services on page 180 from, again, it's being deferred, so I'm assuming you just didn't catch the deferral at one point, but now that you know it's being deferred, your question's good? Okay. Page 181. Are you okay with that answer, that capital projects delayed as a result of the pandemic are being caught up this year? Are you okay? Man, we're going to be out of here by lunch. Go ahead, Councillor Ashmore.
Yeah, thank you. Through you to, I guess, the Director Stover. Page 177, I didn't extract this or didn't send it in as a question, but Cedar Glen Road culvert replacement and Pigeon Lake Road 17. Urban arterial resurfacing. This has been going on for a few years. I'm just wondering, what is the plan for this project, or these two projects?
It's probably a question for engineering as opposed. I think as a deferred, they're deferred from this year, Councillor, so my assumption they would be a priority for next year. They didn't get in this year's budget because of financial constraints, but they would certainly, anything on that deferred list should be a priority coming forward next year, but I'll see if the Director of Engineering, Mr. Rojas, are you on the line? There you are. Good morning, sir. Did you hear the question? Councillor's just looking for an update on the Cedar Glen Road culvert and the CKL Road 17. Obviously didn't make the budget this year, but assuming they would be priorities for 2023. Go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, absolutely correct. There is a need for capital replacement. However, due to budget constraints, it was decided to defer them to 2023. So they would become a priority in 2023. In the interim, so in 2022, both the culvert and the road surface would have to be maintained through our Public Works Department.
Unfortunately, no, I'm not okay with that. I'd like to put this into the decision units for discussion, please. These two.
Both of these?
Yes, please.
Okay, so you're going to make a motion that Cedar Glen Road culvert and CKO Road 17 be included in the decision units for further discussion later?
There's actually two segments of County
No,
Road.
you're moving that?
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
Okay, I need a seconder. Anybody want to second that motion? Councillor Dunn? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we need to at least get it into the decision units, because we've had discussions here saying that we've got money put aside that we're going to be giving to other purposes. I want to concentrate on infrastructure here, and this is our infrastructure. This County Road 17 is our second busiest highway that we own. I know Highway 7 and 35 are busier, but they're not owned by City Kawartha Lakes. Highway 36 and County Road 17. County Road 17 is really getting in rough shape, and if we don't do something very soon, then we're going to be looking at twice this amount to resurface this section of that highway. So I just appreciate just get it on the capital decision unit for discussion. That's all I'm asking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Call the question. All in favor? Motion fails. Sorry, sir. 181. Question from Councillor Elmsley. We do not appear to have early start. We do. Those were approved back in September. Assuming you're okay with that. Poor memory? It's okay. I was questioning some of them too, and then I realized, wait a minute, we already approved those a couple of months ago, so you're not alone. 183, community services, the police budget. There was a little bit of confusion on capital and from some of our previous discussion. Are you straight there now? Yeah, I think so. Okay. 184, Councillor Richardson and Dunn was, what's the timeline for the Coburn Street Bridge? We haven't even approved the design yet, so are you okay with that answer? Is there more information you're looking for from the director? sorry, this is 184. No, that's not in the deferred. The design, when we get there, we'll deal with that. You're right, it's not in the deferred project. I'm getting ahead of myself on the question, so let's wait till we get that part of the budget, and then we'll bring the director in and see where we go from there. Thanks. Okay, so is there any questions, any other comments on the deferred list before we move into the actual capital budget? Okay, so let's go to page 183. And you've got at the top of the page, multi-year projects, and then a bit of a description at the bottom of the page regarding the multi-year projects that are already approved by council and what year. Some of them are wrapping up in 2022, some of them aren't. I don't have any questions for those. Is there any comments or questions on page 183, any of those items? Okay, let's move down to 184 then, which is bridges. We did have a couple of questions, so let's go. Director Rojas, if you're available, there was a question on the timeline for the Coburn Street Bridge. I think what's in the budget being proposed is just to work on a design for next year, and then obviously the actual construction of the bridge would be when future council decides to fund it. It's just getting the design started. Any further question, Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, just one. When this was brought up to council, and I'm going to go back about 2 or 3 years ago, the comments made when they talked council into supporting this was that, well, we're not really going to build a bridge, we're just going to put it in there so we can start getting our development fees for it. Now all of a sudden it's here and we're designing it. I missed that part where we were going to have the discussion once we actually started to move on. So now now staff is treating this as a fait accompli, where that's not the way they sold it to council. So that would be my question. I would like to know what the end figure is and where in the heck the money's going to come from. I've heard figures in the neighborhood of $12 million. And if we start down this road, we're committing our next councils to a further expenditure of $12 million. And we really haven't had much of a discussion on it. So I think it's something that's worthwhile having a discussion. And because the next argument, in my opinion, will be, well, we just spent $400,000 doing a design, of course we're going to build a bridge. And that's the way councils, governments seem to go. We spend money on a minor portion of it, and then the fact that we spent that money on the minor portion becomes the argument for the major portion. So, yeah, I'm not quite comfortable with that $400,000 for designs.
Well, council has approved the location at the Coburn Street Bridge. There is a resolution that there's a bridge to go over there.
Oh, absolutely.
And I mean, we're supporting, keep in mind that we're approving subdivisions in the East End for 6,000 homes and in the West End. And at some point, we're going to need to build a bridge. And we keep putting this off. And I think at some point, we're going to have to make a commitment here.
I can't argue with the fact, and I wouldn't argue the fact, because at that point I would have a conflict of interest or pecuniary interest because I live on Coburn Street. So I'm not arguing the fact of Coburn Street. I am arguing the fact that we're going to spend $12 million building a bridge, and we haven't had a full and wholesome discussion. Because when it was sold to council, it was sold, if you followed the history of this, it was Coburn Street, then it was Sunderbridge Road, and then when we went through our development charges phase, in order to reduce the charges to the developers, we said, well, we'll put it back on Coburn Street now because it won't cost as much to build a bridge there. But we really don't know where we're going to build a bridge, but we'll put it there now so we can start getting money for that. I just don't think we've had the discussion. And when I say we, I'm not going to be involved in it because I will at that point have an interest, and I'll declare it. So I think before we spend $400,000, because I think we can find other spots in this budget to spend $400,000 pretty quick. So those are my comments, and I would make a motion that it be withdrawn from the 2022 budget.
That project 983220104 be removed be removed from the 2022 capital budget.
Yep.
Moved by Councillor Dunn. Anybody want a second? Councillor Yeo. I think you've spoke to it. Councillor Yeo, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, briefly, thank you, through you. Councillor Dunn basically said exactly what I've been thinking for 2 years since we did that development. And I asked the question when we passed that development charge, are we committing to this bridge? And the answer he's given at the time, not necessarily. We're putting it in there for long-term financial planning. And so he's right, we've never actually finished the conversation on it.
Director Rojas, do you want to, I would be interested in your opinion on the progress of this bridge. We seem to be approving a lot of subdivisions, and, you know, I'm not going to argue the fact that I don't think we just put it in the budget or put it in as a discussion to let's put it here so we can start collecting DC charges. I thinking, looking at the structure of the road, there was a bit more thought went into it than that, but I do agree that maybe the discussion hasn't been had to this point, but do you have any comments you want to add? To my opinion, at some point, we got to start working toward building a bridge here. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So this project, there's a long history in this project. There was an EA completed that identified the need for this bridge at this location. It was identified in our 2010 or 11 Transportation Master Plan, reinforcing the location and the need based on traffic. Council at the time did then ask for an amendment to the Transportation Master Plan and look specifically at the Thunder Bridge location, which was evaluated, and again reinforced that the Coburn Street Bridge, from a traffic point of view, is the most effective one and cheaper, but really it was traffic driven. It went into several citywide DCs at that location. And it's in our long-term financial plan. I believe it's 2024, 2025 need in our long-term financial plan. And the cost sits around $8 million, $6 to $8 million is the estimated cost of the bridge. So we've had several discussions, several endorsements of council to construct this bridge at this location. Also, the design, which is the next step, was originally in the 2020 capital budget, and it was deferred due to budget constraints. In 2021, it wasn't included because of our catch-up year due to COVID. So now it's coming back in 2022 in order to get it constructed in 2024, 2025. Just by context on development on that side of Coburn Street, we are seeing about 200 lots or more in that quadrant of Coburn Street West. Several developers have taken building permits in that area, and we anticipate around 200 units for the next several years. We've also noticed redevelopment on the east side in some of our industrial areas, so the need is there. Not building this bridge will put pressure on downtown and on the Wellington Street Bridge, which is reaching a level of service that's going to fail. But those are my comments. Thank
you, Director. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Rojas. For this bridge in the 1990s, we did didn't the town of Lindsay do extensive environmental assessments and studies? Are those studies not out of date now and we'd have to start them all over again, or would you think that a bridge further north would be more practical given the size of vehicles, the truck traffic that would be using this primarily, and the room that they need and less residential area? But getting back to the studies, like, wouldn't all these studies have to be redone, or some of them still valid that were done in the 90s for this bridge in Coburn Street?
Director, go ahead.
Thank you, through the mayor to the councillor. So it was a county that did the class environmental for this project. It included several different things. One was a bridge location on Coburn Street, and the other ones were for traffic improvements and signalization improvements at Wellington, near the Wellington Bridge, so at Lindsay, Queen, and Wellington Junction. So it was a multi recommendation EA. and the traffic improvements have been enacted. So that satisfies the lifespan of the EA. So a new EA would not be required. However, in 2012, as part of the Transportation Master Plan, we revisited that EA and looked at the Wellington Street Bridge, or sorry, the Coburn Street Bridge and the proposed bypass through Thunder Bridge Road, and still determined that the Coburn Street was the most beneficial. So the only new studies that are required are those related to detailed design and consultation. So we still need to consult with the various different agencies, including First Nations. We still need to do some geotechnical, but that's all part of the detailed design that's being proposed in 2022.
Thank you. Okay. Any further questions on Councillor Riley?
Thanks very much. I don't necessarily disagree with most of the comments that have been made here today, but I know that we did have somewhat of a discussion, and just to back up what Director Rojas has said about the best location and obviously the most financial benefits that would come from that location. There's also been more interest over probably in Councillor Dunn's ward, that area over there. There's a couple larger projects, let alone the Flato projects that are coming up on St. David Street, where people are looking at buying a property that was supposed to be built on, but there are new owners over there as well, and I think they're in excess of 1,000 units over there. So I think with our future and all the developments going to be in that side of town, we certainly have to plan for this bridge, and I think this is the most financially responsible place for this to happen.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Dunn, do you want to sum up?
No, I've pretty much covered it. I'm fine.
Okay, so the motion is to remove the Coburn Street Bridge design project from the 2022 capital budget. Call the question. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Motion fails. There's 8 of us, so that's a tie. So we got a couple more questions, so let's move on. Structural issue, Councillor Ashmore, you had on the Cowans Bay Bridge. Did the answer give you the answer you were looking for?
Yeah, this bridge borders on Ward 6 and Ward 8, so maybe if the Director Rojas could just, I just got this answer this morning, so could he verbally go over that again, please? The need for this to be done,
Director Rojas,
please.
why don't you stay with us for a bit? We've got a couple of bridge questions. So, councillors wondering on the Cowans Bay Bridge, just if you can just highlight what your answer says, or the answer here is the need to rehab the bridge includes the deck, approaches, and railing. It's a high-volume bridge. Is there anything to add to that answer? That's what's needed as part of the structural assessment. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the engineering department every 2 years is mandated to do structural bridge inspections or large culvert inspections on all our bridge assets. So this was identified as a need to rehab. So it's not a reconstruction. So there is some life in the bridge. The bridge is not load restricted, but however, in order to maintain this asset, we're recommending rehabilitation of the bridge. Again, in my answer, which includes mostly the deck, but we also do the approaches and the railing at the same time because there's some efficiencies there. And it was the alternative would be to maintain it and possibly load restrict it if the funding isn't there. But the need for a rehab would benefit this asset and extend the life of the asset and avoid reconstruction, which is a costlier endeavor.
Thank you.
That's fine, thanks. No, you don't want load restrictions on that bridge.
High volume, yeah. Thank you. There was another question. Okay, so Councillor Dunn, you had a question about the CKL 36 bridge project, that the guide rail was damaged. You were wondering just explain why it's here. The guide rail was damaged, which is integrated into the bridge substructure, maintaining and repairing it on an interim. However, a full rehabilitation design is required at some point. Are you okay with that answer?
Yeah, I was just more curious as to what the plan is.
Yeah.
this is an opportunity, and quite often when we have opportunities like this, we actually lower the bridge. It was put in there for the train that doesn't exist anymore. And my question was, are we going to lower it, widen it? Because right now it's a pinch point on 36. So I was looking for some details as to what the plan is. I support the bridge. I think it's a great idea, but I would hate to have the same bridge rebuilt when I don't think it's necessary. And I'd like to see what the plans are from engineering.
When this bridge is up for a full rehabilitation design, and I guess that would be the time to look at what Councillor Dunn referring to is, you know, if we want to widen it, if we want to change the look or the need for the bridge at that time, would that be the time to do it? And this is really just a few repairs to get us to that point. Go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. So there is a repair ongoing on the guardrail for the CKL 36 bridge project. So that is funded this year through our Public Works Department. I believe they use emergency procurement, and we helped out with that in order to keep it roadworthy, let's call it. The design in 2022 is for a redesign of the bridge in order to reconstruct it. So we're proposing possibly a large box culvert or a smaller bridge because it is near end of life. It's structurally still sound with the exception of the guardrail. That's why we're doing an emergency procurement. But this is for design of a new bridge structure on 36. Possibly to construct and to be constructed within the next 5 years.
You okay with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I guess, Director, maybe just a comment in the future. In our supplementary information for bridges, a lot of them say as per structural assessment, but from your comments, there's a lot of different work going on with these bridges. So maybe in the future, a little more information there just on, you know, one bridge that says as per structural assessment for Cowan's Bay is actually undergoing repairs, where 36 is a design for a rehabilitation of the bridge. So it might just help council in the future if there's just a little bit more information there, just a comment. Thank you. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question that the EA for the Fenland bypass, before we leave bridges, was needed before work on the Fenland Bridge, and is that accounted for elsewhere? And the answer is EA for the Fenland bypass is not being proposed in the 2022 budget at this time. Did you have any further comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I did. I believe when we had the presentation on the second crossing and bypass, the discussion surrounded the need to start the EA, to look at the EA for a bypass, and the conversation and the expectation is that we would have started to put some money aside this year to do that. Also in that item, my second question was, there is needed repairs to the bridge in Fenland, and I could not find it anywhere in the budget, and that question wasn't answered. So if I could get an answer to that question, and if I could see something about when we are planning to put some money aside for the EA for a bypass. Thank you.
Okay, Direct, I think we approved an emergency procurement for the Fenland Bridge earlier in the year as but I'll let the Director. Two questions there, Director, go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So the first question regarding the existing Fenland Bridge, you're absolutely correct. Earlier, I think it was in January of this year, we approved the emergency procurement to stabilize the bridge. That was completed. And then we brought back a report mid this year for a change of scope. So we changed the scope from a rehabilitation to a full design NEA, which is underway. DM Wills and Associates are undertaking that reconstruction design for the existing Fenland Bridge. It also has been included in our long-term financial plan. I believe the existing bridge is slated to be reconstructed in 2026, if I remember correctly, or plus or minus a year, 2026, 2027. Regarding the EA for the bypass, so the EA for the bypass hasn't been completed. We've come to council. Council has endorsed it. We still need to publish the notice of project completion and then publish the EA, which we anticipate will be done prior to Christmas, so in a couple weeks, by our consultant. And then there is a 60-day appeal period through the minister or a bump up a request. So that has to play out. So that's why we didn't include it in the 2022 budget, but we are proposing to include it in the 2023 budget for that EA. So there was two elements of the EA. One was to do a bypass EA for the bridge, and the other part of the recommendations is to do some improvements at the existing intersection. The improvements do not require an EA if warranted.
Thank you. I wanted to make sure that the work on the Frenland Bridge hadn't been lost, and I couldn't remember whether it was to be included in the 2022 budget or it was done in the 2021 budget as an emergency repair. So I apologize for the question, and thank you for the information on the EA. As long as we aren't losing sight of the work that needs to be done there, that's fine. Thank you.
It sounds like the work's ongoing, so moving ahead, thank you. So that was all the questions I had for the bridges, multi-year projects, page 183, 184. Is there any other questions or comments on that part of the budget before we move on? Okay. Let's go to page 185, culverts and municipal drains. The Salem Road culvert was an early start project. That was already approved. And Councillor Richardson, you had a question determining the St. Mary's Road culvert and the Old Mill Road culvert. St. Mary's is asphalt, Old Mill is a gravel road. You got an answer there. Are you okay with that answer? You're good? Okay. That's all I had for culverts. Is there any questions on culverts and municipal drains? Questions, comments? Okay, let's go to 186, urban rural reconstruction. I don't have any questions for that page. Is there any, you've got your projects and then your supplementary information. Pretty straightforward. 187, Councillor Dunn, you had a question on CKL Road 10, CKL Road 17 to CKL Road 14. Just explain what that is. It's been deferred for a couple of years due to budget pressures. The existing asphalt is 30 years old. I guess that's the rationale for why it's in the budget. Are you further question?
Yeah, and especially based on comments from Councillor Ashmore. I drive that road probably 3 times a month. It's my chosen route to go from here to Peterborough, and it's truly not a bad road. And if we have roads like County Road 17, like I've driven County Road 17, and I have to agree with the councillor that there's certain portions of 17 that are in pretty rotten condition, and if we're going to spend $2 million, is it not possible to better allocate that money to a road that actually needs repairs? You know, I recognize it's 30 years old, but I drive it all the time, and I've never noticed any kind of issues on it at all.
Well, it's part of the, yeah, I mean, it's part of the plan. I don't know, Director, do you want to comment on why that's in there and not the other one? Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, in the original budget, the first draft, we had both CKL 17 at 2.4 million and CKL 10 at 2 million as a need. So they're both required. You could essentially flip a coin on which one you want to do. The 2.4 million of CKL 17 was had more cost savings, but I have no objections of switching the two, obviously subject to budget pressures, where CKL 17 is $400,000 more. But they're both high volume roads, they're both been identified. So whether we do one in 2022 and the other one in 2023 or reverse it, it meets the same objective.
Well, I would think, Director, that if it's going to be a priority for 2023 and one's 1 year, council's already made a decision not to include 17 as a decision unit. So we're going to have them both done, it sounds like, within 2 years. So I'm not sure it's worth
No,
mucking around. But a
yeah.
good explanation.
I'm fine because that question was entered before the decision was made on 17. But sometimes these discussions should happen before we actually start making decisions, because quite often now it's, well, what order was the decision made in, as in opposed to which was the better decision. And I'm just talking for future councils that, you know, maybe if we have these sit-down meetings where the individual councillors from an area can voice their opinion as to which one's more critical than the other, then it would just change the order. Because if we'd had this before the 17 discussion, probably then at that point it would have been appropriate to change our decision.
Maybe. Yeah. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question?
Just a comment, like County Road 17, it was done, and there was one section done in 2019 from Colony Road to Eagle Road, I think it is, or actually closer to center line. So basically the center part of the highway. And the goal was, and staff put this in their 5-year roads plan, was to finish that road. Finish it from Colony Road to County Road 36, Bob Cajun north. So there's two, not to be confused, because it goes from 36 to 36. So we've done the center. We need to do the section that goes from the center to Lindsay and the section from Colony Road to Highway 36, which goes to Bob Cajun. But it is a very heavily used road, and it's a major road that should be done before any arterial ones are done. For example, Centerline Road. So I just think that we're actually going against what the staff were recommending on the 5-year roads plan. So this is what kind of perplexes me, that we're going against what staff said in the first place. Get the main ones done, and then we'll do the feeder roads. So
It sounds like it'll be a priority in the 2023 budget, so thank you. Paige, any other questions on urban arterial resurfacing? So let's go to rural resurfacing on page 188. There was a question about the OSIF funding from myself and Councillor Richardson. The $2 million that you have there, you see there in our budget for all the rural resurfacing, a portion is the federal gas tax, and that is our whole OSIF grant that we got in 2021. So we haven't got a confirmed amount for 2022 yet, but we're told that the provincial government has doubled the allocation for municipalities. It doesn't mean we'll get double. Their complete funding package is $200 million. They've doubled it to $400 million for the next 5 years. This Friday, we should get our allocation. Because it's formula-based, it doesn't mean our allocation will double, but we should get more at that time. We just don't know what it is. So this $2 million is based on the allocation that we have consistently got from 2021. Just for clarification. Are you good with that, Councillor Richardson? Question? Go ahead.
Thank you, and a question for engineering. On several occasions over the past 2 to 3 years, I've asked in 2022 baseline road would be done, and on every occasion when I asked, it was yes, it is in the 2022 budget. So my question is, where is it? Because it's not on this list, so I'm just wondering where my promised road is. Thank you.
Director?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it was in our original draft, and due to budget pressures, it's been deferred.
That doesn't work for me. So I know there is federal gas tax money left, so I'd like to make a motion that Baseline Road be added to the project list. The mayor is at the meetings. Staff has told me for 3 years now, and I've brought it up every time, and every time I've been told it was. So priorities or not, that road's got to be in the budget. So I'll make the motion that
Let's do it as a decision unit, if you want to put it, and we'll deal with it when we get to decision. So can that project, Baseline Road?
Baseline Road, Coburn, be added as a decision unit to be funded by the federal gas tax reserve.
Well, let's do it as a decision unit, and then we'll talk about funding and such like that when we get there, okay?
Okay, I'll just save him some time.
Yeah, so that's under, in the rural resurfacing program, that Baseline Road be included in the 22 or let's just say be forwarded as a decision unit for the 2022 capital budget, and then we'll have a discussion then.
Yeah,
Okay
and I
with
can
that?
bring up all the emails that promised it and everything if they would like.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Yeo, second by Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Thank you. Okay, so that's page 188. Any other questions on the rural resurfacing? Supplementary information is on 189. Gravel resurfacing is 190, 191, and 192. I don't have any questions submitted. Any questions on the gravel resurfacing portion of the budget? Projects? Councillor?
Yeah, through you to Director Rojas. I like this because it sticks right to the plan that we had. There was a plan for each year you'd have a road, and I see one of the roads is on Beaver Road, just as an example. It was to be done in 2022, so it looks like everything's going according to plan. Just wanted to make sure that we had a 10-year plan to 2030 with the director, and it looks like we're adhering to that plan, that each on that list would be, the roads would be put on, and I just wanted to double check that that's what we're sticking to, that 10-year plan.
Director,
Thank
go
you
ahead.
through you, Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do have it's actually, the original one was a 10-year plan, and then we modified it slightly to include a life cycle of 8 years on some of our higher volume gravel roads. But you're absolutely correct. It's anywhere between 8 to 10 years that we resurface or add gravel to our gravel roads. Our gravel roads are somewhat more manageable because we have a lot less gravel roads and hardtop roads. And a few years ago, if you recall, we had an influx of our gravel rehabilitation over 3 years, which allowed us to catch up. So we are now status quo, I think, and we're on a 8 to 10 year cyclical cycle on our gravel resurfacing program. So we are sticking to the plan.
Thank you. This is money well spent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on gravel resurfacing? If not, we'll go to page 193. Life cycle management. Just a note here that the budget, 1.5 million, has been increased from 2021 based on council's decisions every year to increase that budget come spring. We don't allocate roads to this until spring. Staff bring forward a report to council of what roads need it, and then council makes a decision whether to add to it or not with the approved budget. So there's no roads approved at this time, but just wanted to note that the total budget for life cycle management in 2021 was $1 million, just over $1 million, and this one is 1.5. So based on council's decisions over the last few years, staff have raised it to include obviously more roads, which we'll get a list of later in the spring. Any questions or comments on the life cycle extension? Okay. Let's go to 194, sidewalks. Director Rojas, just before, if we're going to deal with Baseline Road as a decision unit, can you get a cost for us so that we have something to talk about later in the day?
I'm doing that now.
Thank you. Page 194, sidewalks. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question about sidewalk on Mary Street in Omemee from King to Queen. There was a council resolution for that work. The sidewalk is in the decision unit spreadsheet for council's consideration. So it's in as a decision unit. So is your question, there was a council resolution to do that sidewalk, and why isn't it in the budget?
I corrected the streets there. It's actually from King to Mary Street, not it's Queen Street itself, from King, which is Highway 7, to Mary Street. It's not a very big section, very small section, so it's in the decision units, looks like.
It is. Would that not be a section? I guess we can deal with it at decision units, but Director, if we do the connecting links for Omimi, would that not be the time to do that kind of work on a portion of the sidewalk if we're doing a rehabilitation in Omimi once we know?
It could be, but sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, there was the decision unit had couple asks. One was the reconstruction of Mary Street, and then one was the sidewalk. So we've answered them separately in the decision unit. I believe anything on Mary Street isn't in the connecting link, but if we had something on 7 or King, we could add it to the connecting link. So I think there's some confusion on where this sidewalk is, but we provided costs in the decision unit anyways.
Okay.
If it's a smaller section and we get the connecting link grant, we could easily just do it as a change order, depending on the exact location.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah, this section doesn't fall in that connecting links grant. It's too far to the east, so it's a very small
Okay,
project.
thank you. So page 194 sidewalks, that was the only question I had on sidewalks. Is there any other questions on that section of the capital budget, 194? Seeing none. 195 is streetlights and traffic signals, project and supplementary information. Any, I don't have any questions on my sheet. Any? I think it's on the wish list.
Mr. Mayor?
Street fixtures, street lights, not traffic lights.
Sorry, just before we leave the traffic lights, I believe that I left a question with Mike Farquhar about the Lindsay Logie. I believe it was in last year's budget. My memory serves me right, but I just don't see, is it going to happen this year or what happened next year?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so that you're correct. That was a couple mid-block pedestrian crossings and traffic signals were approved in the 2021 capital budget. In accordance with our capital close, we have until June of 2022 to spend those funds. So we are a little behind, mostly due to manufacturing and ordering supplies, but that's no excuse. Our plan is still to have those capital projects completed prior to June of 2022.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, 2022.
And that includes the 2 crosswalks on Logie as well? The street light at Logie
Correct.
and Lindsay and the 2 crosswalks, correct?
Correct, and some bike lanes. I think there was a council resolution to add some striping and some bike lanes.
There
On that
was.
section of.
Yeah, there was.
So-
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, before we move off street lights and traffic signals? Okay, 196 is parking lots. 197, airport site works and facilities. Councillor Ashmore?
I had a question, it was to do with parking lot in Bob Cajun, the Forbert pool. That's owned by the city, is that correct? And was that going to be finished this year?
I saw that in the budget somewhere, parking lot for the Forbert pool, that's in here somewhere. It's probably under community services. So when we get there, save your question, but I know it's in there somewhere because I was looking for another source of funding and I didn't get it. So, yes. Okay. Airport site works and facilities, good. Page 198 is landfill, site works and facilities. I don't have any questions, just speak up if there's a question. 199, public works facilities. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question about public works. Fleet depot bays, another for transit operations. It's in the master plan, but we need both of these projects in 1 year. One's a pretty small one for 15,000. The other one is the bay doors, obviously a little more. Are you satisfied with that answer?
Well, I think it's 115,000, not 15, is what it says in my budget book.
The Lindsay Fleet, there's 2 projects. The Lindsay Fleet Depot additional bays is 115. The second one that you questioned, the Lindsay Fleet Depot security doors, was 15,000. You were wondering why they were both being done in the same year.
Well, no, it shows in my budget book as 100,000. Transit Operations Center additional facility.
Well, that's a separate, yeah, okay, I'm looking at the other one then. The security doors is the one I looked at for up above it for 15. So if you're talking about the new bay-related facility, as per the transit, one's for transit, one's for fleet. So you're right, 115 and 100 for the two. They're both in the master plan, and it says they're both needed, so. Okay. Any other questions on Public Works? Go ahead, Councillor O'Reilly.
Maybe it's just a general question before we leave it, but I briefly discussed it with Jennifer. Do we, for the number of master plans that we have coming forward, which we've just discussed, do we actually have a strategy? Are we working on a strategy to support, from a financial point of view, those master plans that we have to implement? Or Jennifer or to Ron, maybe either or.
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor. Yeah, so that's part of our long-term financial plan. We met with each of the departments to look at what they had in their master plan, what the requirements were going to be over the 10 years to ensure that we had sufficient funding to manage those costs.
Thank you. Councillor Yeo, you had a question? You're good? Any other questions on facilities for Public Works? Okay, let's go down to Fleet and Transit, page 200. Councillor Elmsey, you had a question about supply chain and 17 pickup trucks, part of the fleet management policy. Did you want to follow up?
The point was, I mean, I understand how our financing works for fleet, and so there's really no savings even if we don't do it. I just, in terms of spending money, I'm wondering what are the chances we're going to get 17 pickup trucks in 2022, and what are the chances we're going to get 6 tandem axle plow trucks, given what's happening with supply chains in the automotive industry. I don't know if Councillor Vale has any insight into that, but I thought I'd just ask the question as, you know, are we just placing orders that are never going to be filled, or what are we doing?
Well, let's bring the director in. And I know the plow trucks, that was one of the rationale. They're on the early start. So we early started those so they could get them ordered as soon as possible for next winter. And the pickup trucks, like the answer says, it's, you know, they're part of our fleet, and they need to be replaced. Probably going to take a little longer than usual to get them, but if we don't order them, we're going to be at the back of the list. So I don't know if Director Robinson, do you have anything to add?
Through Mr. Mayor, nothing further to add. Yeah, your comments are exactly right. These are all equipment that need to be replaced. They've been assessed by staff. They meet the requirements of our non-emergency fleet policy and management directive. And if we don't get the order in now, it will be delayed even further receiving that equipment. We know currently that we're going to have to expend, unplanned operating money to limp some of this equipment through until we receive delivery of the new equipment. But it is essential to get these orders in place to manage our fleet effectively.
Thank you. Councillor Vale?
I can't speak to heavy equipment or trucks like snow plows or whatever, but I can speak to half tons and whatever. Yeah, you'd need to put orders in now, but you're gonna, if any half tons you get this year, you're gonna pay more. And most dealers that I know aren't even bidding on fleet, and most of us are not doing that this year because of our own inventory constraints. And the manufacturers have constrained fleet pickups or fleet orders for the same reason. So you can try to get whatever you want as far as half tons, but you're going to pay more, and you're going to wait longer to get them.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, just a curiosity question because of the latest news. Are we starting to transition to non-gas powered vehicles? I know we keep on talking about it. I know Councillor Vale brought it up. So are we starting in that process, or?
We have an updated report coming forward at the council meeting in December.
Okay.
To give us a bit of a timeline for that, as per the direction from council previously.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question?
Question through you to Director Robinson. Two questions. What's the average age of our truck fleet, our half tons and 3/4 tons? And I'll ask the other question after that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, within specifically for pickup trucks, we have, we go through our list to just get ages. So we are, apologies, I'm panning through the list here. Just bear with me as I get to the list. So the current fleet policy requires pickup trucks to be a 10-year life cycle. So all of the equipment right now are 10 years and older, anywhere from 200,000 to 355,000 kilometers. So they're all within that requirement for age. Are seeing advanced degradation to the point where we're seeing enhanced operating expenditure on those vehicles. So it is time to replace those. We are going to, as both Councillor Elmsley and Councillor Vale noted, where we are expecting delays receiving equipment. So we are going to do our best to manage the equipment and retain what we can to keep it on the road, noting that we're expecting to see delays in delivery of that equipment. I hope that answers the question.
Okay. You said that there were 10 years or older. I remember us purchasing trucks in the last 2 or 3 years. I thought we purchased trucks less than 5 years old. Do we not have some of them in the fleet right now? And they're not all 10 years older or older?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we have, I can't remember the total number, but I think in the range of 60 pickup trucks, 67, I think. So the ones that are identified for replacement are the ones that have achieved that 10-year life cycle age, and also the mileage and condition requirements to warrant replacement. You're absolutely right. We buy pickup trucks typically on an annual basis, maybe 1, 2, 5. And this particular year, based on 10 years ago, we bought 17 trucks, so we're back buying 17 trucks again this time. And it's just really based on the life cycle and age of that equipment. So yes, we do have some newer trucks in the fleet, and we have some trucks that are probably in the 5 to 6, 7 year age. The ones that are recommended for replacement are all 10 years old or older.
Okay, and the final question is, and I think it's an important question, have we not looked at leasing instead of purchasing because of these? These are highly depreciable assets, and would it not be advantageous for us to start leasing these trucks instead of purchasing all the time and get hit with the depreciation?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, that's absolutely a factor that Public Works Fleet Division takes into consideration when looking at managing the non-emergency fleet. Right now, based on the usage and age and cost of leasing, it's about a 9-month consideration. So if we only need a piece of equipment for 9 months of the year, there is financial justification to lease instead of owning. The majority of the fleet that we have are used year round. So when you look at the overall life cycle cost of a piece of equipment, including the capital purchase, as you mentioned, the depreciation, as well as the operating and maintenance cost of that equipment, it makes sense to own the equipment through that life cycle. The other factor that is difficult to assess when leasing is any damage to a leased vehicle is charged as cost back to the leaser. And as you're well aware, the equipment that we use does see a lot of use and potentially abuse and can experience damage to the box and so on. So all that is considered when we decide whether we're going to lease or own, and it's a financial evaluation that we make on a continual basis.
Thank you. Okay, any further questions on fleet and transit? Okay, let's go over to 202, which is IT, Information Technology Systems. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question about the server hardware, the backup. We did have an outage and lost some time, lost some accessibility to our server. Your question there is this answer. The server hardware project is for the replacement of end-of-life equipment as per the life cycle replacement. It was not related to the September event. So did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a report coming forward at any time to talk about backup? I haven't been involved in IT for many years, and so things have probably changed, and I don't know if it's a good idea to have a spare server sitting on a shelf, or you have an arrangement with an outside company for off-site operation. It just strikes me that for a municipality such as ours, who's heavily dependent on our emails and on data processing for storing our files and a number of other things, as well as our telephones, being offline for any length of time, more than a few hours, is a serious issue. And I'm wondering what the plan is to ensure that we're not faced with that in the future, and whether it's a good idea to have a decision unit to look at a backup server, or if there is another plan for dealing with those kinds of exigencies.
Thank you. Director?
Thank you, through the mayor. So staff did have a capital project a few years ago for a disaster recovery site. We had a budget of about $300,000, and the plan at the time was to install the disaster recovery site at 68 Lindsay Street. We were now in a position, actually earlier this year, to proceed with installing that disaster recovery site. The cost was upwards of $1 million to do that. And so we were already in the works of having conversations about whether 68 Lindsay Street was the correct answer, whether a cloud-based solution was the right answer, or we're in conversations with neighboring municipalities about whether we could host our data, our backup data server center with a neighboring municipality. And so we're looking at all of those options, and we will be coming forward with a report to council on what makes sense.
Thank you. I think it's important that we deal with that because, as I said, I really don't think we can afford those kinds of outages, and it's just the way we do business now.
Agree. Sounds good. Any other questions? Oh, Councillor Dunn, you had a question on the Lindsay fiber optic network project. Second from the bottom. You've got a response there. Do you follow up?
Yeah, they tell me it's faster. Well, I recognize that. So I guess my question is need for $250,000, because what I read is to service the water tower. I'll have to dig up the answer, but so my question is do we need $250,000? Like how much faster? Like, 3G, 4G, 5G now. What kind of an impact does that have on our life up at the water tower? So that's kind of where I was going with that. It's still $250,000.
I don't think it's at the water tower. I think it goes to the water tower, then to our depots, but I'll let the director answer. I don't think we need the 5G at the water tower, but go ahead.
Correct. It gets installed at the wire tower to extend our ability to be able to connect to some of our other facilities. And so we are struggling at some of our remote facilities trying to get connectivity there, which is important for communication with staff, being able to do normal business, as Councillor Elmsley said. And so this is really just trying to get our network to its optimum point so that all staff have connectivity.
I'm okay. Yeah, there's always going to be a faster car, and there's always going to be a faster fiber optic, and I'm just kind of wondering at what point is fast enough. That's all. I'm fine.
Well, it's like rich, right? How do you know when you're rich? Because when you get to be rich, you want to be richer. So, Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
I was just going to ask through you to Director Stover. We hear of all these broadband contributions from Ontario government, federal government. Are we not tapping into those to help us out here locally, that we shouldn't really have to go into our budget? You know, we see these multi-millions of dollars that have been announced for here. Are we not able to tap into that and apply it to this type of a project?
Through the mayor, I believe that the infrastructure that you're speaking about is to actually fix the cell gap and bring broadband to more rural communities, so households, as opposed to we have the infrastructure here, we just need to expand on it ourselves.
Yeah, this cell gap is actually a different project that council's approved through, you're correct, through the provincial and federal government. But I think what the council's referring to is, and I don't know the wording, maybe you have it better than me, CAO, but it's for infrastructure broadband, and the private providers are allowed to apply for it to increase bandwidth in different communities, and we're seeing that taking place. Some of the towers coming forward and stuff is as a result of that. So I'm not 100% sure if it's available to municipalities, but do you have any more to add to that? Ron, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm, those are specific to private providers of broadband. We wouldn't be eligible for any funding under those programs.
And you're right, that was like $1 billion that the province and the federal government put up, but keep in mind, that's across Canada, so it sounds like a lot of money, but it's not when you spread it out amongst the whole country, so.
Just to give an example, Bell had tapped into this money, and they laid fiber optic from Dunsford to Thurstonia along Thurstonia Road, and that's quite a stretch of highway. So they were able to get funding from that, and that brought fiber optic cable to that community. So I just thinking, if it's not just a private thing, maybe we should be able to tap into this as well as a public, as our public infrastructure.
There's just eligibility requirements for the grant application that the province has put forward, and we as a municipality don't apply for that eligibility, so that's why we're having to pay for it here. Okay, any other questions on information technology? Okay, let's go down to fire, 204, fire fleet, fire services. 204 is a list of fire facilities with supplementary information on 205. Any questions on that? Kind of looks like just some various upgrades around different halls, which we do every year. So any questions there? Okay, let's go to 206, fire fleet and equipment. I know Councillor Helmsley, you had a question about replacement of boats. How many boats does the service have and where are they located? I was going to answer you and say they're located in the water, but I didn't bother. So, but you've got an answer there. 3 boats, Coboconco, Mimi, Fenland. 2 are 12-foot aluminum. 1 is 14-foot. It's a replace a boat taken out of service last year that was in Bob Cajun. Unfortunately, the odd time we need boats, but go ahead. Do you have a follow-up?
It was just that $25,000, I knew they were aluminum boats, and $25,000 to replace an aluminum boat seems a little high. I thought aluminum boats, 14-foot or 16-foot aluminum boats weren't going for 25 grand, so I was curious why there was that much money in the budget for it. It seems to be that they're adding equipment to it, and I'm not sure what that equipment is.
Well, maybe with, someone from the fire department can help us out. Is anybody on the line from fire fleet? Just a couple of questions on the boat. I know it doesn't take much to, you'd be surprised at what a boat costs these days, but some of the boats out on the lake. But Acting Chief Jones is with us. So Terry, I don't know if you heard the question, just trying to get a handle on the price of the boat, $25,000, aluminum boat. Is there equipment that goes with that makes up the difference? It just, Councillor's comment, it seems a bit high for an aluminum boat. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's not so much, the aluminum boats really don't serve the firefighters, you know, in regards to rescue or anything. They've just been boats that we've already had, but moving forward, we need to, they're deep haul boats, like aluminum boats, kind of a deep haul boat. These boats are more for the fire service, which will, you know, enhance our rescue, putting equipment across. It's just a whole, like I said, we could buy aluminum boats cheaper, but they just do not actually work for the fire service and what we need a boat for.
So it's replacing an aluminum boat, but it's more than just an aluminum boat, and that's why it's costing a little bit more, correct?
Correct, through you, Mr. Mayor, but this was one of the boats that we had received through the police many, many years ago, and it just out of date, so it was replacing the one in Buckhaven.
Thank you. Counselor? Counselor? Okay, we're good. Any other questions while Mr. Jones is with us before we cut him off on fire fleet? Okay, no, I think we're good. Thank you, sir. So let's go to 207, paramedic. Headquarters design. Counselor Dunn, you had a question about the headquarters design project. There's an answer there. Did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
Yeah, like why, yes, Mr. Mayor. Why does it cost $600,000 to design a building? Like, I recognize it's based on percentage and the engineers get involved and yada, you know, and all that stuff, but $600,000 sounds like a whack of money to build a building. Yeah, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
well, let's
I'm just-
let's get the chief on the line. Chief, are you there? Paramedic, question on paramedics? Rand, there you are. Hello, good morning, sir. I don't know if you heard the question. The councillor's just asking the design of the paramedic station, part of our master plan, obviously. Something we're looking to do. Why 600,000 seems like a lot of money to design a building was the question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did hear the question, and unfortunately, I wish Dr. Found was on the line to provide a more detailed explanation, but certainly, as the councillor said, it is based on a percentage of the value of the facility. The facility was addressed in the master plan as one of the key priorities in phase one, so we needed to move forward with it, and the consolidation of 7 or so facilities into one requires a large and expensive facility. So Dr. Found has provided his advice in terms of the costs that would be required for the engineering design and the work to select the site, and this is based on his advice.
Do we have an anticipated time when we're going to build it? Once again, this is a design. So are we looking at in 2023 a $6 million building we want to build?
Go ahead, Chief.
So, through you, Mr. Mayor, that timing is addressed in the long-term financial forecast that Jennifer Stover had discussed earlier. We would be looking at it being built within the first early phase of our master plan, which would be in that 2023 to 2024 area. So yes, it would be within the next couple of years.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Any other questions for paramedic facilities? While the chief is with us, are there any questions for paramedic fleet and equipment on page 208? The 2 ambulance remounts were an early start, already approved by council, just for information. Other than that, it's just replacing some standard equipment as per our asset management plan. Any questions on that? Seeing none, thanks, Chief Mello. Appreciate you being there. I think what we'll do is, why don't we take a 5-minute stretch, and we'll come back and deal with page 209, Victoria Manor, and we'll go from there. So 10:30, so let's come back at 10:40, and we'll go from there. Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. Everybody's here. We're on page 209. Victoria Manor. Some projects there and supplementary information below. I don't have any questions on my list, but any questions on Victoria Manor? We got the big dog chair with us. If there's any questions, you can help us out. Seeing none, you're off the hook. Let's go to 210, which is building and property, community services. And the supplementary information looks like just an upgrade to various buildings around the city. Questions on building and property facilities? Seeing none. 212, park sites and facilities. Councillor Dunn, you had a question about the Memorial Park washrooms. Please explain. If you've ever been in those washrooms, you wouldn't need an explanation, but go ahead.
No, I understand. I'm fine with it. Yeah, I'm good.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Deferred item, right?
No, the Memorial Park washrooms are in the budget for this year.
They actually are? I thought they were in the deferred.
Do you want to defer them?
No, not remotely. They're like Evans Baseline Road. They've been for 3 or 4 years. So anyways, thank you.
No, they're in the budget, $325 for this year, and certainly well overdue and well used. So, Councillor Ashmore, you had a question on the Verulam Centennial Park shelter? No, sorry. Verulam Centennial Park washrooms, demolition $12,000. You're wondering about a replacement? Did you get an answer on that?
No, I didn't. I think Councillor Dunn also extracted that as well. I haven't got an explanation. If I get an explanation, then I can maybe speak to it.
All right, let's get Director Shanks on the line. Those washrooms, I don't think they've been used for many, many years, and they've used porta potties, so maybe that's the plan going forward. But Director Shanks, did you hear the question?
I did. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, there is actually an explanation and an answer on in the question and answer portion. It was from Councillor Dunn, and you're correct. So the park has been serviced by porta potty or portable washrooms since pre-amalgamation, and in fact, those permanent washroom facilities have not been operational since pre-amalgamation. So due to the ongoing aesthetic and environmental concerns, the demolition will take care of that. And we plan to continue servicing that park property, similar to other municipal parks throughout the city, with portable washrooms.
So it will have a washroom moving forward at the park. It'll just be a portable washroom as it has been for over 20 years, correct?
That would be correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
No, it's not okay. Sorry, Mr. Mayor. This is the only public washroom between Bob Cajun and Lindsay. It's on County Road 24. This was put up in 1967, Canada's 100th centennial, and it was put by the former Verulam Township Council. It was looked after right up until amalgamation, when for some reason it was never looked after, and it's in the disrepair that it is now, that basically it has to come down. But just putting a couple of portaloos there, that's not the answer. I mean, I don't think that looks really nice. We really need to replace this, and you know, we spend millions of dollars on parks everywhere else. Why can't we replace, at least get a price of what it's going to be to replace this public washroom? I think it's really a disgrace that we can't even look at replacing it and just stick a portaloo out there, and that's our solution to it. I don't think it is. I'm not asking that it be in the budget for this year, but I would like to get a price on what it would be, you know, moving forward, because I think that they deserve this. This needs to be replaced, and the people out there deserve that, and they worked hard for that, and just to be kind of just demolished and that's it, it's not right.
So why don't you suggest in 2022, the beginning of the year, bring forward a memo asking for costing and for staff to bring forward costing for a replacement washroom, and then we can have the details, and then once you have that, you can decide where you want to go in a future budget.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions on the park sites and facilities? Okay, over to 213. Oh, that's just a supplemental information for park sites. 214. 215 is recreational facilities. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question about the capital budget includes a replacement upgrade of the Fenland Township Community Centre exterior doors. Is this facility not closed? It remains open. It's being used for internal functions. It's our staff COVID rapid testing center right now, and it has received enhanced Wi-Fi and can be the home for future various city meetings such as drainage boards. So sounds like it's closed as a community center, but still being used by the city. So that's why it's in the budget for an update. Go ahead.
No, it was I was under the impression that facility was closed. I knew it was being used at least temporarily, but I thought, do we really want to spend $20,000 on the doors if it's not in our long-term plan, and it's not because the library's been moved out of there, and I didn't, I don't know how many community meetings are going to take place there, but it just struck me that, do we need this facility going forward? Or, and I think the director's opinion is that we will need it going forward, and then and the doors need to be replaced. So that's the way it is.
Okay. So that's your question asked and answered. Any other questions on recreational facilities? Councillor Ashmore?
I had a question on page 213. Could I ask that? Or am I too far or too far behind or too far ahead?
Which page? I don't have it on my list, so that's my confusion. I missed some of your questions, so. No, what are we back to 213?
213, please, yeah. Maybe through you too, Director. It's the last one on page 213, Irene Peckin Park. Actually, Peckin is spelled P-E-C-H-I-N, after Irene Peckin, who donated that land. Removal of damaged concrete dock to ensure property is safe for use. That's located off Leslie Frost Lane. And it is dangerous, the concrete that's there, and it needs to be taken out. But my question is, are we going to be replacing it, at least some sort of a dock space, whether it be some sort of a dock structure in the next year or so, after we take out the concrete dock, which has to come out. It is in really rough shape and it's dangerous. But my question is to the director, can we look at replacing that in the future?
Go ahead, Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. At this time, there's certainly no plan to replace the dock at that location. Just recently, got 100 meters to the northeast. We just currently put in the new dock location for the Pleasant Point boat ramp. So we feel that area is already serviced with public boat dock. So right now there is no plan to put in any kind of replacement dock at Irene Peckin Park.
Just a correction there. It's not a boat launch. It's a dock there. You can't get a boat down there, but there is a nice boat launch that we spend a lot of money, which is nice, and people appreciate that. But all they were asking for was just some sort of down in the future, like whether the dock itself could be replaced, even half of it, just through a wooden structure or pontoon dock or any type of dock, because there's no boat launching there. It's just it's a public access point.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I never said that there was a boat launch there. I indicated that the Pleasant Point boat launch is just 100 meters down the street from there. So it's already serviced through another format. So right now, again, the plan is that there would be no repair. That would be a council direction, or no replacement. That would be a council direction if there is to be a replacement requested.
Thank you. Any other questions? I think we're up on 215. Recreational facilities. Councillor Elmsley had a question about the Fenland Township doors. That's been answered. I had a question about the Forward Pool. I know there was a grant for Forward Pool, but it's only interest, so I'm fine. And then Councillor Dunn, you had a question on 216 about the 2 Lindsay ice pads. That was an early start. We've already approved that, but you had a question about the pads. Go ahead.
No, I just didn't want to let $3 million go by in budget discussion without actually drawing the attention to the fact that we're spending $3 million on the Lindsay. I mean, it's a big ticket item, and I think I understand the explanation. It's something that, once again, just for the public's consumption, I think they should have a quick overview from the director as to what we're actually doing.
Yeah, I think our process has been we're replacing a pad at different arenas each year, and from an affordability perspective, and Lindsay's was the next priority, but I'll let the director comment on our plan to replace the ice pads and why Lindsay was in the budget this year. Go ahead, Craig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. So basically all those comments are correct. So we have been attempting to bring the life cycle of our ice pads at our various arenas up to date. The life cycle expectancy for each is approximately 25 years old. So they are in fact all past due to be replaced. Bobcaygeon, Woodville, and Fenland Falls all have new pads either recently because they've been redone in the case of Woodville and Bobcaygeon, and Fenland Falls is a new facility, a relatively new facility that's still within its life cycle. This will address the two main pads that we have across the city within Lindsay. They are certainly the two busiest, and they have the two longest annual life within a current year. One is all year round, and the other is up to 9 or 10 months per year. It has ice in it, so they are older. They were both built in 1988, so they're currently, as of next year, will be in the 34-year range. And when you add the fact that the ice is kept in year round, it actually creates a longer, or they are older than what they are sort of truly currently are in comparison to our other facilities. So this will still leave the other 4 arena facilities to be addressed in upcoming budget cycles. So that would be Little Britain, Oakwood, Emily Omimi, and Manvers. And staff's plan is to bring them forward in other upcoming cycles. This isn't just the pad. This does look after the piping below them, as well as the dasher boards, the glass for the ice, the headers that are underneath the ice surface as well. So it provides it all, and it will again extend the life cycle or create an additional 25 years of life for those facilities. The other quick thing I will mention is that this project actually was previously approved through the early start projects. So the tendering process has begun, and the meeting with potential bidders for pre-qualification, I believe, is either it's in the next coming weeks if it hasn't already happened. So the project is well underway. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Director.
Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question for Director Shanks. Last year's budget cycle, one of the deferred projects was the Coburn Wharf, and this year it's neither in the budget nor in the deferred project. So I'd just like an update on last year's deferred project in Coburn at the Wharf. If you could just give me an update on it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. Yes, that project, again, due to the pandemic, the actual assessment of it was delayed. So staff are continuing to work on it. And when we get the results of that assessment, we'll have a better idea as to what is required to be done and what the budget required will be. And we will be bringing forward that project in a future year's budget once we have all those details.
Okay. Councillor O'Reilly, do you have a question?
Just to Director Shanks, the time frame for the Lindsay Twin Pad Arena.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillors, one of the specific reasons why we brought that forward as an early start project was so that we could get the documentation out, tendered and closed and awarded, so that the work could take place this summer. So there will be no impact on the 2022-2023 calendar year. So the summer ice for 2022 will in fact in all likelihood be held at a different facility. So the time frame is during the 2022 year, so that the 2022-2023 ice season will take place.
Thank you.
Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, on that page 216 on the 50-50 grants, last year we increased the 50-50 grants because a lot of our partners in the communities couldn't do fundraising and couldn't do some things that they had been able to do in the past. And I was wondering if there was any consideration being given to increasing that amount this year.
So where are you seeing that? Isn't that operating? Isn't that part of our operating budget? Show me where you're seeing that 214? 50/50 community project? Okay, so,
Yeah, that's the one.
okay, sorry. So that one has been doubled. Council had a resolution to double that already, to do it in 2021 and 2022. And when I reached out to the director and to Director Stover, the 80,000 is in the budget because the other previous 80,000 has already been approved by council. So this 80 is the original 80. We've already approved doubling it, so we only need to approve the 80. Does that make sense? That's why it's actually 160, but in the budget you're seeing 80 because we've already approved the other 80. Does that make sense? Okay, I'm getting
So
nods.
how does that affect the total overall budget increase?
So, through the mayor, so on the assumption that this 80 that's in the capital budget gets approved, there will be a total of 160,000 available for the 50/50 program. But council's already approved 80,000 to be funded through the pandemic funding. So we didn't want to put it in the budget and then have it confused that it was 160 in the budget and then there's a separate resolution for another 80. So we've kept them separate so that council can approve the 80 that they would normally approve. Council's already approved the additional 80 out of the pandemic funding, which will give a total of 160,000 for 2022.
Thank you. That's a better explanation than I did. Any other questions on recreational facilities while we're there? Okay, let's move down to page 218, Parks and Rec Equipment. I'm not seeing any further question, but Parks and Rec Equipment, we have projects and some supplemental information there. Is there any questions on that? Seeing none. 219 is Cemetery Site Works and Facilities. Any questions on that while we have the director? Councillor Ashmore?
Through you to the director. I asked this a couple of times before. The Campbell Monument Company, they will take grants, applications for replacement monument restorations. I'm just wondering, have we applied for any of those grants in our cemeteries?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, we are aware of that previous grant opportunity, and it's remained similar as to past years. That program does not exist at this current time. If it does come back online, we will certainly be applying because yes, we have applied and accessed in the past.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Cemetery Site Works and Facilities? Seeing none, that is our capital budget book items. Are there any, before we move on to decision units, are there any further questions on anything or comments regarding the capital portion of the budget? Is everybody comfortable with where we are at this point? I don't believe anything's been removed. Anything's been added, so we're status quo for now. You tried. We shot you down. We'll get it there. Okay, so let's go over and have a look at our decision units then. We'll start on that before lunch. So I'd like to deal with, because it's from the deferral list, if we can deal with Councillor Richardson's deferral first, and then we'll go through the list that we have, because that came off the deferrals. So there was a deferral made, a motion to add to the decision units the Manvers Arena parking lot and lighting, the Manvers Arena universal accessible washrooms, and the Manvers Arena chiller and accessories, and the Manvers Arena exterior doors, for a total of $699,000. Their community fundraising group has agreed to put in $50,000 of that amount, so it would be a total of $649,000. And I would propose, after discussion with the director, if you're okay, sorry, let me find it here, that be approved in the 2022 capital budget and funded from the balance in the infrastructure gas tax reserve. So there's $892,000 in there. That'll bring it down to just over $200,000. And in speaking with our treasurer, if we can keep 200,000 in there, she'd be very appreciative. Let's get a motion. Will you move that, Councillor Richardson? And then we can have a discussion about it, see where council wants to go. Second by Councillor Vale. I'll just speak to it briefly, and then because I kind of flagged this right off the start for a couple of reasons. And one, you know, we've committed to this community and this arena facility, and we have a community group down there that, despite the pandemic, has been fundraising, and they've got over $80,000 in the bank. They've agreed to put $50,000 toward this, and I think out of all our arena facilities, this is the community group that has really sort of taken this over and done some good work. So I think it would be prudent, in my opinion, for this council to show that we are supporting the work that they're doing. You know, this pretty much cleans up all the work that needs to be done at the Manvers Arena, except for some accessibility issues in the future. I know there's a future ice pad needs to go in there in 4 or 5 years after speaking with Director Shanks, but this sort of sends a message to the community that, you know what, we appreciate the work you've done, we're committed to your facility, and let's get it cleaned up, and then we can start moving on to some of our other facilities. So I think it's a good motion, but I'll let Councillor Richardson has a bit more knowledge than me. Go ahead.
I will, and thank you, and through you. When I did see this deferred, it had been deferred from last year, and I've waited out the process, waiting for something to happen for Manvers Arena. And this year, I just said no. We just need to address issues. This group, this community has come together. They've done a new facelift for the building to give it a nice aesthetic look. We've done new counters in our canteens. We've bought a television for the lobby where, we service it for, TSN and all the sporting things. And we've been able to fundraise $83,000, plus more than that, because we also gave to our user groups. So our user groups were able to put more ice hours into the facility with skills and other competitions to help their smaller, the smaller user groups have more skill using our arenas. So for me, I feel like this community has given a lot. They're dedicated. They're going to continue to fundraise. Even during the pandemic, we were able to generate some more funds, which I didn't think we could, but we did. So it's just, to me, it's just time to show members that, yes, we are respecting what you have done. We see what you are continuing to do, and I'm just looking for support on this.
Thank you. Councillor Vale, do you want to add anything?
I think just to what the two previous speakers have said, I feel that it's important when we had the discussion about reducing ice pads and everything else, and what came out of that from the community. This was the one community that put a group together and work to not only fundraise, but they're in there doing repairs and stuff that they can themselves. And not only that, when the conversation happened about usage and where their center fell in compared to usage of other centers, they went out and worked with staff on booking and their user groups. They went out looking for outside user groups to make use of that facility so that it could remain in that community. So I think it is a very important thing that at some point that we do something to show that community that, that hasn't fallen on deaf ears, and that it's much appreciated.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on that? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just make a quick comment. I support this motion 100%, but I've heard 3 times now that it's the only group. If ops had been given an opportunity, we shut down ops in one fell swoop. If ops had been given, they built that arena. They have a wonderful working group in Ops Township, and if they had been given an opportunity of time to come to council and make preservations, I'll match the people in ops. Well, actually, they're pretty close. They're just down the road. I'll match the people in ops against the people in Manvers any day.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the motion? So, I don't know, Caroline, Director, does the motion give you the clarity you're looking for? So, 649 to be funded from the infrastructure gas tax reserve and 50,000 as a community contribution. Okay? Do you want to sum up? Are you good? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that's passed. Good, thank you. Okay, so let's go to our, in your folders, there's an updated in-color capital budget decision unit. So I'd like to just go through that one at a time, and we'll have a discussion in each of these. So the first page is already completed or underway. So are there any, we've got the crosswalk at Victoria Avenue and Laurie Boulevard, it's already in the budget. Courtyard walls, that's already moving forward. Fire department equipment regarding trucks, it's covered, excuse me. Is there any, on that first page, is there any comments or questions that confusion over? Okay. So on the second page, these are projects already included in the 2022 capital budget as well. Sidewalks on Commerce Place and road reconstruction on Tracy's Hill Road that Councillor Ashmore had as a decision unit is in the 2022 budget. Any questions on that second page? Okay. And then you've got the next page is starting with Pigeon Lake Road. You've got projects proposed for inclusion in the 2023 capital budget. So you've got the Omimi Splash Pad, once we have the report, the pump park, if supported, will be included in the 2023 budget for deliberations. It says staff will bring forward a report in Q1. I'm assuming that that deals with that decision unit, so just speak up if I'm out of line here. Ops Arena and Community Center, there's a motion there. This report has been delayed. It's going to come forward in Q1, so future budget considerations for 2023. Ward Park. Yep.
Just a quick question, there are some issues with the Ops Arena right now in the sense that I think there are some leaks in the roof, and I know that that facility is available to rent the upstairs. To Director Shanks, is there any? I realize there's maybe. Have they discussed what something like that might cost to just keep the facility dry, basically?
Director Shanks, are you still with us?
Hello.
Did you hear the question?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, right now there's no intention for any capital dollars to be spent on that facility. Yes, we will. We use the sort of arena pad more for storage of parks equipment in the wintertime, and then winter equipment in the summertime. The hall portion we will continue to rent out, but it's very, very limited. If there's any requirements to do any repairs to it, we will do it through operating. At this time, we would not suggest spending any capital dollars on that facility, because whatever is determined to proceed with this, if there is to be a new facility there and whatever the purpose of that, in all likelihood, based on the current structure, it will be a replacement facility that would be required, and that's what that report will spell out.
So in the interim, there was some complaints, because I do believe that they had the voting was out there, and they thought that the area above the voting area was leaking. But are you familiar with that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I believe that staff in Parks and Recreation are aware of it, and it's within their plan to ensure that the required repairs are put in place so that any potential future rentals can take place.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Yeo, the Ward Park, as per the resolution, this project will be included in the 2023 capital budget for deliberation. You okay with that?
Yeah, and I brought it up in case any funds were required to update the design that was done in few years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. And it doesn't seem like staff thinks they need any money, so I look forward to next year's, seeing in next year's budget. Thank you.
Thank you. And then the next page is one item, the right turn lane at Simcoe Street and River Street is not under the jurisdiction of Kawartha Lakes, so staff will correspond with Durham Region to determine project feasibility. Okay with that, Councillor Vale? Okay. So decision units on the next page, 245 of your printout, I guess. So the first decision unit And then, so any counselor that wants their decision unit, basically, I've got a random, that project such and such be included in the 22 capital program in the amount of, and we have to have a funding source. So if you're proposing it be included, we can have a discussion about it and go forward from there and how we're going to fund it. Councillor Dunn and Elmsley both brought forward traffic signals and streetlights, crosswalk at St. Joseph Street and Angeline Street North, $125,000. Council resolution, a warrant review has not been completed at this time. This location is not identified in our transportation master plan, site-specific, that would require a warrant and a design review, and staff would request an extension to Q4, from Q4 to Q2 22 for a warrant review to see where we go with this one. So are you okay with that, Councillor Dunn? Councillor Elmsley? That seems to make sense, okay? So warrant review would be done by engineering. So do we need a motion for engineering to do a warrant review, or is that kind of, they're assuming as part of this recommendation that the warrant review will be completed and brought back? Okay, good. The next one is Councillor Vale's number 2, traffic signals and streetlights, crosswalk in Little Britain on Eldon Road by Dr. George Hall Public School, $125,000. This location is not identified in our transportation master plan. It is a site-specific location that require a warrant and a design review. Do you want to make a motion to proceed with a warrant and a design review and have it brought back, and then we can discuss in the future?
Yes.
Okay, so let's do that then, because it's not mentioned here that it's coming back. So let's do another one for Q2 2022 with a warrant review on that one. Moved by Councillor Vale. Second. Councillor Elmsley. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe just for sort of the record, maybe it would be good if there was a warrant review requested for the first item, just so we stay consistent. We would take it as direction based on conversation today, but I think probably if council prefers, at least there's a resolution with direction.
Okay, let's do that. That a warrant review be done for the crosswalk at St. Joseph Street and Angeline Street North with a report back in Q2 2022. Councillor Dunn, you'll move that. Second by Councillor Elmsley. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. So item 3 is Councillor Vale, traffic signals and streetlights, crosswalk in Manila at intersection of Simcoe Street and Edward Street, $125,000. This location, again, is not identified in our transportation master plan as a site-specific location, require a warrant and design review. Do you want to proceed with a review as well?
Yes.
Okay, so move that a warrant review be done at that location and Q2 2022 reported back. Moved by Councillor Vale, second by Councillor O'Reilly. All in favor? That's passed. Next one is Deputy Mayor O'Reilly and Councillor Dunn. Traffic signals and streetlights, crosswalk at Chadwin Drive and Angeline Street North, $125,000. Council resolution that staff report back by end of Q4. The warrant review has not been completed at this time and it's not identified, so staff will request an extension. So are we okay with doing another motion for a warrant review back on that location for Q2 22? Moved by Councillor Dunn, seconded by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. All in favor? That's passed. Number 5 is Councillor Elmsley's gravel resurfacing Moore Drive, the entire road, $49,000. Mooring Drive from Fells Point Road to the south assumed end is identified in 2023 in the gravel 10-year plan. Are you okay with next year?
Yes, with the understanding that they'll probably get a lot of calls for grading on that road in 2022 because it does deteriorate quite badly. There's about 70 residents down there, and it gets a lot of traffic. And after a rainstorm, it does deteriorate rather badly. So I have been a pain to Public Works by requesting. I know it's hard to believe. but I have in requesting grading on that road quite often.
Well, I guess you could let the residents know it'll be a priority and for 2023 and stay on staff to make sure it gets brought forward if you're okay with that. Okay, so item 6 is Councillor Ashmore's life cycle extension Clearview Drive, $30,000. It's not identified in the current 5-year plan. It is identified within the 216 roads need study for improvement in a 6 to 10 year time frame. So it sounds like it's 2022 is 6 years. 10 is obviously 2025, so somewhere in the next 3-4 years, it looks like that one's identified to be done. So, go ahead.
This section it's what's the remaining left of the, we did a lot of life cycle extension on that road, and it's not a very big section. It just seemed logical to do it within the next 24 months. Maybe, it just seems that it's just a continuation of what we've been doing, and to put it off for 2 or 3 more years doesn't seem right. Maybe if I could ask, like Mike Farquhar, possibly, or Director Rojas for a comment, if I could.
Your comment is what's in the comment section, but can I suggest maybe that if you want to make a motion to see if council will consider that road, section of road, Clearview Drive, be forwarded for consideration in the 2022 life cycle extension plan. We don't want to put them in the plan because we don't know what roads are going to need yet, and if you do put it in the plan, then you're going to bump somebody else's road. But I think if you say that it be brought forward for consideration, then you'll get an answer back whether it's in there or not as to why. So I think that's probably your best path forward if it needs to be done. You okay with that?
That's great, yeah.
So you'll move that Clearview Drive be brought forward for consideration in the 2022 life cycle extension program. Second, Councillor Dunn. Any questions? Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. My understanding of the life cycle extension program is that the decisions are made come spring by Supervisor Farquhar. Why is there a budget number? Because we're just going to operate within the budget we already have.
It would just be by forwarding it. We've got 1.5 million for life cycle extension that we're approving. This would be brought forward for consideration under that.
Yes.
So if at that time it's not on the list as a priority, then we could make a decision as council to add it, but then give more money for it, which we've done in the past. But it'll be brought forward for consideration in the spring when we know what other roads are a big priority under life cycle extension.
If it's not already on the list.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on that motion? All in favor? That's passed. Okay. Councillor Vail, item 7, road reconstruction. Oh, that's just a little ask, isn't it? So all roads in report. Now that report is in your folder if you want to review it. Low volume gravel roads. This was a proposal, a really good proposal actually, a report brought forward by Mike Farquhar regarding these little end section of roads that we talked about. How do we start tackling this? My suggestion, 6.6 million, so I don't think we want to add that to the budget at this point, but my suggestion, Councillor Vail, and Council, is we should be getting an increase in our OSIF funding. We don't know what it is yet. We'll find out on Friday, apparently, what our allocation is. So whatever over and above the $2 million, it's a commitment from the province for the next 5 years. So why don't we leave this one till our operating budget? And if we find out we got an extra $1 million or $2 million, then we can start tackling this over a 4 or 5 year project without adding to the tax levy, and it might be a great use of those funds moving forward. But until we know what it is, that would be a suggestion. So are you okay with that, Councillor Vail? And then we can add to the capital program at our operating if we have a special request like that.
I'm agreeable to that. I think that's a good idea, and I agree. I think this is a really good report that's come from engineering to start tackling some of the stuff that costs us more money to maintain than if we actually just did it and looked after it and knocked it off the books. So I'm in agreement.
Okay, Councillor Ashmore.
Just wanted to make a point here. I I submitted a road, Purdue Road, for consideration. I'd like to have that, at least in that language in there, that Purdue Road be included in that for consideration. Because we have $6.6 million here. And I'm assuming it's not just one road, it's several roads, is it not?
It's pieces of roads. The report's in your folder, but it's pieces of roads all over the municipality where they're paved, and then there's a section of them that are gravel. And I think the argument was that maintenance-wise, you know, our graders are going all over the place trying to maintain these small sections of roads, and if over time we just pave them, it would save on operating costs in the long run.
Purdue Road wasn't on that, and I'd just like to put that road on that list if I could, for consideration. Purdue Road. It's a very small road, but it's a sort of a semicircle sized road off Pigeon Lake Road.
All right, well, let's make a motion then that Purdue Road be added to this report for consideration under the low-volume gravel roads, and then staff can, when we, maybe for next week, we can have some information on if it sort of hits that criteria on why it's on or why it's not. You want to move that? Second? Councillor Richardson? Call the question, I guess, that it'll come forward next week with some, do you want to speak to it? Call the question, all in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, passed. Okay, motion passes. Okay, next one is, so I'll get an update on that and we'll bring that forward at operating budget next year once we have more information. Number 8 is Councillor Ashmore, rural resurfacing. Hawk Drive and Grassy Road from Hawk Drive to Emily Park Road, $329,500. Both Hawk and Grassy are identified in the 5-year plan in 2022. However, due to condition priorities of other roads, they were deferred to the 2023 capital in the rural resurfacing program. So it looks like it's a priority for 2023.
Just to comment, Councillor Richardson and I, we discussed this, and really the important part is Grassy Road. That really should be done first, because it goes from Hawk Drive. Hawk Drive needs to be done, obviously, but in order to get out of Hawk Drive, you have to go on Grassy Road, and Grassy Road really needs to be priority right from Hawk Drive to Emily Park Road. This was something that we discussed with Mike Farquhar for this year, 2022 coming up. Either it's on the rural resurfacing or it goes into life cycle extension. It could be a candidate for life cycle extension as well. So,
well, at $329,000, it would probably use our whole life cycle extension program, so that's probably not the best from what they're proposing. So it looks like it's a priority in 2023. If you're not satisfied with that, you can try a motion to get it included in this year's budget and figure out how you want to pay for it.
If we get it on the radar, that's fine.
It sounds like it's a priority for 2023, so
That's
my
fine.
suggestion would be just halfway through next year, follow up with staff to make sure that nothing's changed, and we'll go from there. Okay? So the next, I don't know if we need to do these individually. Councillor Ashmore, you've got 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. Cedar Glen Road from Highway 36 to Cedar Glen, Indian Trail, McGregor Drive and Bob Cajun, Centerline Road, Charlor Park Drive, and they're all not identified in the 5-year plan, but are within the 6 to 10 year time frame. So I don't know how you want to tackle those. There's a lot of roads, a lot of money, and we've got a lot more of them. So what do you?
I'd like to go over them individually, please.
All right,
That's
number
what we're here
9, rural resurfacing, Cedar Glen Road from Highway 36 to Cedar Glen, $105,000. This section is not identified in the current 5-year plan. It is identified within the 216 roads needs study for improvement in a 6 to 10 year time frame.
We have to put it in the 5-year roads plan within 5 years, because it's not identified in the 5-year. This section is not identified in the current 5-year plan. So I'd just like to get it in that 5-year plan, if I could, that section of Cedar Glen Road from Highway 36 to Cedar Glen, with Cedar Glen, the community Cedar Glen.
So that Cedar Glen, so your motion that Cedar Glen Road from Highway 36 to Cedar Glen for $105,000 be included in the next 5-year plan or the current 5-year plan? I don't know, when's the current 5-year plan expired? Yeah. Juan's here. Juan, when does our current 5-year plan expire? When we're talking 6 to 10 years, what's the time frame we're talking about?
Yes, thank you, through you, to you, Mr. Mayor. So we are currently finalizing our next 5-year plan. We anticipate going to council by Q2 of 2022 to bring forward our next 5-year plan, which will start in 2023. So in 2022, the intent is for council to adopt the next 5-year plan with year 1 being 2023.
So I might suggest what we did for life cycle is that it be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan coming forward, and then you'll get an answer from staff one way or another if it's in, or why, if it's not in, why.
That's fine with that one. The thing is, we really need to get a 100% answer because some of these are life cycle extension sections that could be done. It doesn't have to be totally all reconstructed. That's the thing. When I see rural resurfacing, for example, Cedar Glen Road, there are sections that are the worst, and they could be just they could follow under the life cycle extension the next 2 to 3, 4 years, and that would get us to the point where we could resurface it. So,
well, I think when staff bring back a report for the 5-year, when you say forwarded for consideration, if that's the best program, then staff will put it in there. If that's not the best program, then because you've made a council resolution, then I think it'll come back and staff will say this is a better candidate for life cycle extension, and we recommend it, you know, in that program. So I think that'll get you where you need to be if your motion says for consideration in the 5-year plan, because you're right, it might not be, you're assuming it's under rural resurfacing, there might be a better program.
it's fine, thanks.
Okay, so you'll make that motion.
Yep.
I'm gonna need a seconder. Councillor Yeo, you've spoken to it. You had a question, Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get my plans in order. So the current 5-year plan that's listed in our answers, that's the one that comes, and I guess this would be through to you, to the city engineer. That's the one that's coming to an end in 2022, or when you say the current one, is that the one that's being proposed?
Yeah, so Director, we're just questioning, so a lot of the comments say it's not identified in the current 5-year plan. Is that the current plan that expires in 2022, and you'll be asking council to adopt a 2023 to 2028 5-year plan going forward? So when you say current 5-year plan, that's the one we're in right now, coming into our last year. Is that what you're talking about?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. In 2016, council approved a 5-year plan with year 1 being 2017. So 2017 to 2021 this year is our current 5-year plan. In 2022, we will bring forth a new 5-year plan to take it from 2023 for the next 5 years. So our current 5-year plan expires at the end of this year.
Okay, so my question through you, Mr. Mayor, is they're currently in the 6 to 10 year time frame. So can I safely assume, much as I hate to assume, can I safely assume that everything that's in the 6 to 10 year plan will probably be in the new 5-year plan that you're going to present to us in 2022?
Director, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, that is a safe assumption. That is the intent. Now, we did some preventative maintenance on small sections, so which may kick it out further. Keeping our good roads good. But for the majority of them, they would be within the 1 to 5 year plan coming to council next year.
Thank you.
So, and if it's in the budget as a decision unit, and it doesn't come forward in the next 5-year plan, there'll be a rationale why. That, you know, the road was repaired temporarily, so we're gonna get another few years out of it. I mean, that makes sense, but can we just make sure, because these decision units have been brought forward, that if it's not in that next year plan, like you're suggesting, the 6 to 10 year time frame, that an explanation as to why it's potentially been bumped out of that? Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
no issues with that.
Okay. So the motion on the floor is that Cedar Glen Road be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year plan, which I think is exactly what staff are saying here. Councillor? Okay. So that's fine. How? Do you want to make the motion or just leave it with the recommended? The 6 to 10-year plan that staff are proposing is the next 5-year roads plan, which is what your motion said to bring it forward for consideration. So that's what staff are already going with it.
Okay, that's fine, bring it forward for consideration. In the 6-year plan, or?
Cedar Glen Road from Highway 36 to Cedar Glen be brought forward for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan? Sure.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe just some confusion in terms of the dates and numbers. So in 2016, we did a roads needs study, looked at every road, and said, when will it need to be updated or reconstructed? The categories were now within 5 and 6 to 10 years. So that was a snapshot in time, and then we subsequently did a 5-year road plan at that time in 16. And as you can appreciate, anything that was a now need was highest priority, and then the 1 to 5, and it informed that. And so you also have to factor in affordability. So we had a capital ceiling, if you will, for each of these categories, and we slotted and prioritized things in. In our first 5-year plan that we're concluding now, we probably accomplished all the now needs at the time and the 1 to 2 year sort of needs. When we bring the next plan forward, I just want to be clear, I don't believe all 6 to 10 or beyond 5-year needs. We're going to do another assessment, look at everything, and there's going to be a new list of here's the now roads, here's the within 5. You are probably safe to assume the majority will be those roads that we didn't get to in our first 5 years, that they're now going to still be a need and probably more of a need. But it's not a perfect science. And it's also going to mean that we have to look at it from an affordability perspective. We may have $100 million worth of roads that need to be done immediate or in 5 years, but can only afford a subset of that. So just for clarity, but you will probably see the majority of the roads. So referring these to that review is probably not necessary at this point, because we're also looking at the needs sort of in between. That's going to inform it. So you're best to see what the next plan is that comes forward, and it will have a rationale as to why it's an immediate priority versus sort of a midterm plan priority.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, I'm just assuming that by passing these motions, that when the plan comes forward in Q2 of 2022, that roads that we're forwarding now, if in fact they're not included in the 5-year plan, then there'll be an explanation as to why they weren't included in the 5-year plan. Of course, my other hope is we very well could be, and I hope we do, but we very well could be approving a 1.5% increase for infrastructure. So as we get closer along into the 23, et cetera, budgets, there should be more money in the budget for these types of roads anyway. So that's why I support the motion, because at least if there's something missed in Councillor Ashmore's list and everybody else's, at least we'll get an explanation as to why they weren't included. It would also identify to staff that you have your priorities and we have ours, and we want you to think about us when you're also moving these roads forward. So I just think it's a good idea to keep it out there, and that way we can, we'll be aware of why decisions were made, not just that they were made.
Thank you. Any other questions on the motion? Do we have a mover and a seconder? We do. Call the question. All in favor? And that's passed. You want to do these all individually, Councillor, or do you want to just sort of that they all be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan, and part of that report, as Councillor Dunn mentioned, then they're at least they're identified, or do you want to do them individually?
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to do them individually. I just, I'll go as quickly as I can here.
That's okay. So rural resurfacing, item 10 is Indian Trail, Pleasant Point, entire road, $74,360. Section not identified in the current 5-year plan is identified within the 216 road needs study for improvement in a 6 to 10-year timeframe.
Yeah, thank you. This road here in Pleasant Point, it's the one road in Pleasant Point that really needs to be dealt with. There's a lot of cold patch that goes on this road all the time. A lot of people live down that road. It might be a candidate for life cycle extension, but it should be considered within the next 1 or 2 years. It's getting really rough right now. And just constant cold patching and pothole repair on this particular section here, Indian Trail. So
It is not the only road.
Oh, I know it's not the only road, but I'm bringing them up
Yep.
and for a reason.
Yep. So what do you
And
propose?
They're all here for a reason.
What do you
And
propose?
I propose that it go into consideration for life cycle extension.
Life cycle extension for 2022? Okay. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, seconder. Second. Motion has failed. And you want to go to the next one? Councillor Ashmore, rural resurfacing, McGregor Drive, Bob Cajun, finished from 219 life cycle extension, $95,500. Again, not identified in the 5-year plan, current plan, and is identified with the 216 road needs study for improvement in a 6 to 10-year timeframe.
For McGregor Drive, sorry. That's the one we're on. Yeah. So we did life cycle improvement on this one in October of 2019, and it repaired the worst parts, and it did a great job. But that's the whole idea of that life cycle extension. That's the purpose of that program. You repair the worst sections of it to extend the life of the road. So the remainder of the road needs to be considered. I think in this case, like, I would consult with engineering and see whether they would consider it a life cycle extension or put it into the rural resurfacing, because it did a nice job what they did, and they did long sections, but I mean, it needs to be just finished up. It's not a huge project, but then again, they have 95,000, but I'm not sure whether that's, okay, that's under rural resurfacing. Will it, I would, ask that this be within the next 24 months in consideration within the 5-year roads plan. The new roads plan that's coming out next year for consideration.
Well, that motion that's here is basically doing that, but if you want to do what you did for Cedar Glen, that this be McGregor Drive, Bob Cajun, be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan coming back in Q2 of 2022. Is that what you're asking?
Be fine, thanks, yeah.
Okay, and then we'll get direction on where's a good candidate for that road. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second by Councillor Yeo. Any questions? All in favor? And that's passed. Number 12 is Councillor Ashmore, Centerline Road from Sunnywood Road to Kings Wharf Road, $157,000. Again, not identified in the current 5-year plan, but is identified in the 216 road needs study for improvement in a 6 to 10-year timeframe. So same situation.
Thank you. This particular section could be a candidate for pulverizing, and I just wondering if we could refer it back to staff for possible pulverizing, like what we did on Shamrock Road between Sturgeon Road and Centerline Road. We pulverized it and did a good job, and it built the base back up, and then we came back, which is what we did this year in Shamrock Road, and resurfaced it. So if this could go back to staff for pulverization.
So referred Centerline Road from Sunnywood Road to Kings Wharf Road, that section of road be referred to staff for a report back in Q2 on other options to improve this road in the consideration in the upcoming plan, something like that?
That sounds good.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Ashmore. You getting all that, Sarah? Second by Councillor Yeo? Yes? Any questions? All in favor? And that's passed. Item 13, rural resurfacing, Charlore, am I pronouncing that right? Charlore Park Drive, the entire loop, $264,000. Again, not in the current 5-year plan, but has been identified in the next 6 to 10-year timeframe.
Yeah, thank you. This is a it's a loop, that's what it is. It goes around in a circle. And it should be in writing that it'd be within the next 5 years, so hopefully that would capture this if it's in the next 5 years, 5 to 6 years, roads plan.
Well, that's what they're saying, but again, if you want to make that resolution, it seems to be what we're doing is make that resolution that it be forwarded for consideration in
For
the next
consideration.
5-year plan.
I'll do that.
Then it will identify it, so,
Sounds good.
okay?
Yep.
And a report back when we get that, so. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second, Councillor Yeo. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Okay. So the only one that, see, here's me being a nice guy. Just want to go on the record. The only one that you didn't get, Councillor Ashmore, was your Indian Trail, because you tried to put it in life cycle extension and that failed. So do you want to just continue with the path that we're doing for the others? I think that's a consistent approach that would be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year plan and report back with all the others, and then it won't get lost. Do you want to go back to that? 'Cause
We can take a Purdue Road, because we've dealt with that. I put that in, so just 14, 15, and 16. Clifford Drive, St. Luke's Road, from Sturgeon Road to St. Luke's Parish Hall, and Heights Road from
Hold on, I'm going back to number
14 to
number
16.
10. Go to number 10.
Yeah.
I'm trying to help you out here. Indian
Yep.
Trail, you tried to put it in life cycle extension and it got lost. So do you want to go back to your original recommendation that Indian Trail, Pleasant Point, the entire road for $74,360 be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan with a report back to council, like you've done for the others, so it doesn't get lost?
Okay, that's fine. It's captured there. Okay.
Okay. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second by Councillor Yeo. All in favor? That's passed. So at least we're consistent on those. They're going to get captured, so. Okay, so what were you saying about 14, 15, 16, and 17?
We've dealt with 17. All we have to do is 14, 15, 16, the same to be considered for either life cycle extension or rural resurfacing. Number 14, 15, and 16 with a report back.
So you don't need to do them individually?
Well, I could, but
Well, no, we can do
Yeah.
14, 15, and 16. That item number 14, 15, and 16 be forwarded for consideration as, in the next 5-year roads plan and a report back to council when that comes back.
that'll be fine.
'Cause that's consistent with everything else, so that makes sense. Second by Councillor Yeo. You're going to have to second some of his motions, you know that, eh? Okay. Any questions on those? All in favor? That's passed. Okay. Number 18 is Councillor Ashmore and Councillor Yeo, rural resurfacing, Lakeview Estates Road, reconstruction, $341,230. There was a resolution that staff report back by the end of Q4 2021. There's a whole bunch of different roads, a whole bunch of different sections, and this one is the same. This is identified in the next, well, which will be the next, should be the next 5-year study that's coming forward with all the others. So they've just individualized the different costs for the different sections of roads. But by saying Lakeview Estates Road, I think you're covering all of them. So where do you want to go with that one?
Just for clarification, so it's in the 5-year plan? Or is it not? Because there's a new plan coming out next year. And we don't know whether it's going to be on that new plan. As the director had said, there's a new plan coming out next year, an updated list for the 5-year roads list.
Well, it says this road, at the bottom of the explanations, this road is identified in the 216 road needs study for improvement in the next 6 to 10, which is the next year 5. So it's identified as part of the study. So my recommendation would be make the same motion that this be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan with a report back to council, and then it doesn't get lost and you'll know exactly where it stands.
That's fine. I had one more follow-up after that. That's
Okay,
good.
and
Yep.
Councillor Yeo, you'll second that? Thank you. Any questions on that? All in favor? That's passed. Follow-up?
This is it. Victoria Place, I put a memo in, I think there was a a petition submitted in the spring or late winter last year about Victoria Place. There's a 214 home subdivision, Victoria Place. If that would be considered in this 5-year plan as well. If I could put, similar to what we have in Lakeview Estates here, what we've been dealing with.
Well, let's ask council if they'll add it as a decision unit, and then maybe when we're through the rest of them, we'll put it on at the end of the list. Well, we'll bring it up at the end. Don't let me forget. And at Victoria Place, and we had a decision unit from Councillor Yeo as well regarding Baseline Road. So we'll add those at the end. 19 is rural resurfacing, Councillor Elmsley, Chambers Road from Mark Road to Highway 35, $277,200. Same explanation. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This road is desperate. And, you know, I would be happy if we cut the amount in two and did from the Mark Road to Cameron Road this year, or in 2022, and then from the Cameron Road to 35 in 2023 as a life cycle extension. Unless it comes up to do the whole thing. But I think it needs to be looked at. It really is. I get calls from farmers who are telling me their equipment's being damaged by driving over this. So it is in very, very bad shape.
Well, it's rural resurfacing, so what are you proposing?
I'd like to send it to be considered for life cycle extension in 2022.
So your motion that Chambers Road from Mark Road to Highway 35 be forwarded for consideration in the 2022 life cycle extension with the possibility of splitting it over 2 years?
Exactly.
Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. Move, second by Councillor Yeo. Any questions? Councillor Dunn?
Yeah, is the road from County Road or City Road, 21 to Marks Road, is that now complete?
It's done, yes.
Okay, all right, okay, that's fine. I just thought you were missing that piece, that's, okay, it's done, okay.
So the motion is for consideration in the life cycle extension program in 2022 with the possibility of splitting it over 2 years from a cost effectiveness. Any other questions? All in favor? That's passed. Number 20 is Councillor Elmsley, rural resurfacing Kelly's Bay from County Road 30 to the end of Kelly's Bay, $160,000. Says Kelly's Bay Road is identified in the 5-year plan in 2022. However, due to condition priorities of other roads, it was deferred to 2023 capital in the rural resurfacing program. So should come back as a priority in 2023. Are you good with that?
I have asked for this road for 3
Let me
years.
rephrase. I know you're not good with that. Are you okay with that explanation?
I'm okay with the explanation, but it is another road that's in desperate shape.
Okay, so again, my suggestion would just be, let's leave it, and then you follow up with staff before budget next year just to see if they can get it on as a priority, which it sounds like it will be anyways. 21 is Councillor Richardson, rural resurfacing Sandaraska Road, $181,500. This section, again, not identified in the current plan, but will be, looks like it is identified within the 216 road needs study for improvement in a 6 to 10 year time frame.
I'm okay with the explanation, but I just want to flag this for some discussion. The reason I put this one on is some of the smaller roads, this one I put in just for pulverization and not doing anything else, because you've got Public Works out there patching these roads. Some of these roads take 2 to 3 days to patch, and they're just a constant patch. Or turn them back to a gravel where they can manage them in 2 or 3 hours with just grading. And this particular road, Boundary Road, runs adjacent to it, and it is a gravel road. So I was just looking as a cost savings, spending less money in the Public Works with resources and time as opposed to, making it an easier fix. So that's why I put it in there this year. So I don't know if
So what do you want to do with it now?
No, it's fine where it is, but that's why I put it there. I think sometimes some of these roads need to be pulverized and that's it, so we can manage them better.
Well, so if we're going to be consistent, and this is the same as many of Councillor Ashmore's roads, why don't you make the motion then that Sandaraska Road be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan, and look at the option of, depending on where it is, that pulverization is one of the options looked at going forward. And I think that probably what's going to happen anyways, but if we're being consistent, we might as well flag these for all of them. So do you want to go there? Okay, so moved by Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. What time we got? Okay, we'll keep it. 22 is Councillor Richardson, rural resurfacing, Cedar View Drive, Omimi. 108,000, again, not identified in the current plan, but up for consideration in the next plan. Do you have somewhere you want to go with it, or do you want to just be consistent and sort of flag it in the next, for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan?
Yes, we can flag both 22 and 23 for the same. These roads in the last year have had significant smears put on them. Like one, Cedar View alone had 5 smears, so I just felt like they were ideal candidates for the life cycle extension program, so that's where those 2 roads fall. Number 24, Cottingham, I think there must be an error with the estimated cost on that.
Let's just, let's just do 22 and 23 then. Do you want to leave them, or do you want to flag them for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan with a report back? And then if there's a better program for them, staff will identify it, I think, at that time, take it out of that 5-year plan, life cycle extension. That's when you'll find out. So I think we should be consistent if we're doing that, and just do that with those 2, so that 22 and 23 be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan with a report back. Good? Moved by Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor Yeo. All in favor? That's passed. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. 24, go ahead.
I was trying to rip through it for you. So Cottingham, its estimated cost is at 151. I think that must be a typo. I just recognized it now. There's no way that road would be that cheap. And also, this was prioritized. It was supposed to happen in the 2022 budget, and it's deferred again. So I would like it to be considered if we get the extra funding.
So let's get it, Councillor or Director Rojas. So one question at a time. So the question was, sorry, what was your question? The cost of 151,000 for Cottingham Road seems very cheap?
I don't think it's right now.
Okay, can you confirm that cost, Director, because the councillor's questioning?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, I'm here with Mike Farquhar, so it looks like there was an error, and maybe when we entered the number, it must have copied from the one above. So 151 isn't the right amount, but I'll work on it to get to. It's higher. It's higher than 151.
Can you get that back to us after lunch?
I will do. Yes.
Okay, so let's leave it. Let's make a note. Let's make a note to come back to number 24, Cottingham, after lunch. Okay, so 25, Councillor Seymour Fagan is not here with us, so she's got 1, 2, 3 roads that she's brought up, which fall under that same explanation. They're not in the current 5-year plan, but are identified within the next. So I would propose that 25, 26, and 27 be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan with a report back, and then we can go from there to be consistent. You'll move that? Councillor Yeo and Dunn?
Actually,
sorry, go ahead.
I would move that for the first 2, but I have been in conversation on 27 with the councillor.
Thank you. So let's do it for 25 and 26. Now those are the same amounts. We'll assume they're okay. that they be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year roads plan and a report back. Moved by Councillor Yeo, second by Councillor Dunn. You're okay with that? Thank you. Any questions on those two? All in favor? That's passed. 27, go ahead, Councillor Yeo.
27, I would make the motion that they be forwarded for consideration in the 2022 Life Cycle Extension Program. Everett Road is, to borrow some other terms, it's deteriorated, it's bad, it's awful, it needs to be done.
Okay, so be forwarded for consideration in the 2022 Life Cycle Extension Program for $93,000. Moved by Councillor Yeo, second by Councillor Elmsley. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. 28 is Councillor Vale. Rural resurfacing, White Rock Road to Simcoe Street, $151,000. Again, not identified in the current plan, but is identified within the next 6 to 10 year time frame.
Thank you. So it's Royal Oak Road from Simcoe to White Rock. I'd like to move that it be included in the 22 work plan, and my reasoning and rationale for this is not only do I get, like everybody else in this room, a ton of phone calls from residents on that road, but Public Works is actually reached out and had the conversation as well that this road needs to be done. There was a conversation about having some emergency work done on it last fall, which they did a small smear, and it was to be redone in 21, which didn't happen. At this point, from engineering and in discussions with Mike Farquhar, we have now surpassed the cost maintaining this road as to what it would cost us to replace it. So they've got it on the books here to replace or resurface at $151,000. So from 2018 until today, we have spent over $116,000 maintaining this road. That doesn't include the labor for 2018, 19, and 20. Public Works is estimating material-wise alone in 22, they're going to need over $30,000 worth of material. We have spent way more maintaining this road than what it's going to cost us to replace it. That is how bad a shape this road is in.
So what are you proposing? What's your motion?
That it be added to the 22 work plan.
That Royal Oak Road from White Rock Road to Simcoe Street be included in the 2022 rural resurfacing capital budget, and financed how? Added to the tax levy? Added to the tax levy of 0.12%. Moved by Councillor Vale, seconded by Councillor Yeo. I guess you've spoken to it. Councillor Yeo, do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, briefly, and I know it's added to the tax levy, but there are some cases where it just has to be done, and this is one of those cases. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All in favor? And that's passed. Okay. Sorry, just making a note here. 29, Councillor Vale, rural resurfacing, from Highway 7 to Quaker Road. What road? I'm missing a road, so.
It's Taylor Road.
Taylor, okay.
So this is out at the Sunderland Co-op building. So even looking at this and in conversations with engineering, if it could be, I would make the motion that it be added to life cycle improvement from Skyline Road to Quaker Road, which cuts this in half, which that is by far the worst section. And to Councillor Elmsley's point, the complaints that come in from this is 100% farmers trying to access Sunderland Co-op. Sunderland Co-op right now is in the process of building a huge new fertilizer building, which is only going to increase the traffic there. The majority of farmers come in from the north from Quaker Road, obviously to try and avoid 7, to the point that they're now all going to, or not all going to, but talking about taking 7 because they're damaging not 20-year-old equipment, they are damaging brand new wagons and tractors coming down that section of road. And if you travel it, it is simply held together by patches. There's nothing left.
So what are you proposing?
I said that I would make the motion to add it to the life cycle improvement
For
the section.
consideration?
For consideration at the section from Skyline to Quaker.
So that Taylor Road, from Skyline Road to Quaker Road, be forwarded for consideration in the 2022 Life Cycle Extension Program? Yes? Moved by Councillor Vale, second by Councillor Yeo. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Okay, why don't we? Okay, go ahead. I like your 2-minute thing. I was going to break for lunch, but we got 2 minutes, so go ahead.
Move that number 30 through to and including number 35 be recognized in the next 5-year cycle and reported on.
So that item number 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, and 35 be forwarded for consideration in the next 5-year road study with a report back?
Yep.
Okay, moved by Councillor Yeo, second by Councillor O'Reilly. Any questions? All in favor? That's passed. Let's take a break for lunch. It's 12 o'clock, and why don't we come back at 1:45? Does that work? 45 minutes? Okay, 1:45, we'll get back at it, and thank you.